of June 30th. I'd like to do them separately. Somebody make a motion?
I make a motion to approve the minutes of the regular school committee meeting dated June 14, 2016.
Second.
Are there any questions or corrections? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposition? Unanimous. For the next one,
I make a motion to approve the minutes of the regular school committee meeting dated June 21st, 2016.
Second.
motion made and seconded. Any questions or corrections? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? Done.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of the policy subcommittee meeting on June 30th, 2016.
I second.
Motion made and seconded. Any corrections or questions? Hearing none, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay, we're now up for public comment. This is a time for the school committee to hear public input. Is there anyone that would like to address us at this time? Okay. We don't have students. Do you have any good news for us other than the back from vacation?
Well, I don't know if that's good news or bad news, but no, I am back from vacation. No, we don't have any
Okay,
special
good.
good news for tonight.
Good. All right, would you like to?
Yep, sure. Under new business this evening, we actually have several reports, but the first is a presentation from Doran Whittier, so I'd invite them to come on up. As you know, we've been working with Doran Whittier since the fall on the comprehensive facility assessment. And in June, when I'd reported to the committee on the status updates, we had discussed actually pushing out the final report to early September, but there were going to be a couple of key check-in dates over the course of the summer, and one is now, where Doran Whittier is actually going to present a status update with regard to the full-day kindergarten, the kind of the temporary solutions that we'd be looking for, hopefully from a year from now in September of 17. So they're going to provide us with that presentation this evening. And I think the format, certainly presentation, I have looked at the slides and some of them are pretty in-depth, so there can be ongoing conversation throughout the presentation. And then I think the goal is at the end of tonight to possibly leave and give them some guidance to kind of finalize a few things for the August meeting. And in August, we really need to make some final decisions around what we would like to see for a full-day kindergarten implementation in the short term, because we need to give that feedback to Doran Whittier to then go finalize the final overarching comprehensive facility assessment, which we'll then get in September. It's very timely that we get that for fall town meeting in October. So we have to kind of stay up on our dates. But tonight they're going to give a very nice overview and presentation with regard to where we are, questions and answers, and have a good dialogue, and then hopefully come back in August and try to finalize. So I will turn it over to the representatives from Doran Whittier.
Hi, and we're happy to see all of you again. I'm Michelle Rogers with Doran Whittier Architects, and to my right is Jason Boone, educational planner, Emily Ray, and Brad Dorr. And as Dr. Lang had suggested, we have a lot of information to cover tonight, so as we go through these slides, it's important that if you have questions, feel free to just jump in and ask the questions as we go, because by the time we get to the end, we may have forgotten what they were and going back. With that said, we're going to move forward. Tonight, we're coming back to you with our short-term options for kindergarten. And again, we'd like to discuss them with you at the end of this. And when we say short-term, we're looking at implementing some kind of solution so that you can have full-day kindergarten in 2017 to 2018. Now, this, of course, is a temporary solution. The district would then begin to develop their statement of interest, which is called the SOI, to present to the MSBA for your long-term solution for full-day K or major building project. And we think that that will take approximately 6 years, depending on where you are in receiving the okay from the MSBA, and about 6 years between the time that you submit that statement of interest to the time that you occupy the new project. And then, again, when you're looking at the master plan, it would be about 2023 when you begin to consider the second phase of the master plan. And all along throughout that, it's our intention that you would be implementing your building maintenance and capital improvement projects for the buildings that would not be, you would not be having the SOI with the MSBA before. So with that said, we have we've made some assumptions for our full-day kindergarten, and we're assuming that it's 377 students to serve the full-day kindergarten. with a peak in 2025. And this is based on the analysis that we've put together for your long-term enrollment And we've looked at 18 to 19 students per kindergarten classroom for those, so that we can arrive at a classroom need of 20. Now, currently, in your existing schools, you have 8 kindergarten classrooms, and so that gives us a need of 12 additional classrooms. And we're going to walk you through how we think that you could achieve those 12 classrooms in various ways. We have 4 options that we've looked at, and each of these options have sub-options. So in option A, we're looking at modular classrooms at each elementary school. So that would be your 4 elementary schools, not including Westland. So it would be Byam, Harrington, South Row, and Center School, adding additional modular classrooms to each one of those buildings. In option B, we would be looking at putting all your modular classrooms at one school. And in this case, we've chose either Center or Westlands for that modular addition. And then in that option, you would also convert Westlands, the kindergarten classroom, the pre-K classrooms to kindergarten classrooms. So that's 2 parts to that same option. In option C, we talked about renting space somewhere in the district. You'd look for the amount of space that we would need to accommodate the extra 12 classrooms, plus the additional space. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And then finally, none of the options, A, B, or C, has actually addressed keeping the community education programs in the Westland School. So we were asked to go back and take a look at what we would do if we wanted to keep the Westlands Community Education Program on the Westland site. And so the option D addresses that. With that said, option A has 2 parts, as I promised. It would be either connecting the modular buildings to the existing school or not connecting the modular buildings. And in connecting modular buildings to an existing school, we begin to start to trigger some of the code implications that we've talked about in the past. And once you connect that building, you then have to go back and provide full sprinklers throughout the building and upgrade ADA accessibility for the entire building. So this would be the 3 schools, Byam, Harrington, and South Row, that do not have sprinklers in them and are not handicap accessible. Center School is actually fully sprinklered and has had, as part of their previous renovation, ADA upgrades. So option A1 is connecting the modular classrooms to the building. Option A2 looks at not connecting those modular classrooms, so it would be placing those buildings 10 to 25 feet from the existing building, depending on the existing structure of the building. And in some cases, we may or may not be allowed to provide covered walkways that connect the modular classroom to the school. Yep.
If we don't connect, and in order to avoid the requirement for the accessibility upgrades, when do the accessibility upgrades occur?
If you're in the building and you're not doing any other upgrades to the building, then you can continue to occupy that building as it stands.
Grandfather.
It's grandfather.
We'd still need to provide the accessibility if we had students who needed it, though, right?
You should be providing that for the students that need it, yes.
But if we do an upgrade, it will trigger.
Yes, it will.
If it's connected. That seems like. Okay.
Emily, who determines the upgrade? Is it local?
No, it's state building code.
Okay,
We
so,
have had discussions.
so sometimes portable buildings that maybe are on wheels or portable themselves are considered temporary structures, and therefore sometimes variances are allowed. Has there ever been a variance in a situation like this because they're so temporary for us, because it's part of a master plan?
So we've had discussions with your fire chief as well as your building inspector, and as soon as a building is connected to the existing building, you've begun to trigger those upgrades requirements.
Emily, what does the term connection mean? Is it
Physically connect to the building, so through a hallway or other passageway, so that one structure is actually physically connected to the other.
so if you said 10 feet, and 10 feet is probably the length from you and I, and if we had a walkway with roll-down plastic, kind of sides like you would have, is that a connection?
that may be allowed. It depends on the existing structure that we're talking about. So in some instances, that may be allowed. You'll see at Westlands, because of the fire rating that exists at the gym and where we've placed that, the modular building, a covered walkway would be allowed.
And I know I'm getting ahead of myself.
That's okay.
I apologize, guys. I'm just curious, if you could have option one, okay, I apologize, option two, 10 feet away, connected with a small, I don't want to call it a hallway, it's a covered area with the sides that drop down for weather protection. Would that be the ultimate choice so far? Because I know that's kind of the module.
I think before you get to the kind of determining the ultimate choice, it'd be good to be able, because there's many more than just these, is to go through these. The purpose of this slide really is to go and at least provide, you know, the baseline assumption for connection versus not connected, and what the code implications are associated with that.
Okay.
And then, you know, we'll kind of get into all of these different options, because there's, as Michelle was saying, there's a number of permutations.
Okay.
One other question about the modulars, whether they're connected or unconnected. Are you making any assumptions about who will be in the modulars? That is, if you have the modulars at an elementary school classroom, are you planning on putting the kindergarten kids in there, or could we put fourth graders in instead?
You could put fourth graders. We did, when we looked at the size of the modulars, we did look at the size of a kindergarten classroom. So we based it on a 1,200 square foot classroom with bathrooms, and that's how we priced it. If you choose to put fourth graders in it, the classrooms could be smaller.
Okay. One thing about that, you said you're recommending 20 new classrooms based on the peak size. Do we need 20 modulars, or do we need to walk away from the projects with 20?
So as we go through the options, you'll see how we've looked at the different number of modular classrooms versus using other existing options.
And just to elaborate on that a little bit, the NESDEC enrollment projections suggest that in the 2018-19 school year, you could have a need for 19 sections of full-day kindergarten. It's actually more cost-effective to execute these in pairs. And then 10 years out generated this, actually a 21 section number. And so after working through these numbers with the working group, we landed on a planning target of 20 sections to serve at least the 6-year window that we're looking at, and potentially a little bit longer by going from 18 students in each one to 19 students in each one.
Okay, so
And that's total sections in the district, including the ones that you have available to you today.
that are in place now. So even if we didn't do all 20 right away with the modulars, by the 2018-19 year, even if we only had 18 of them, we'd still be cramped for space
Exactly
based
right.
on the existing projections.
That's correct.
And be looking at either adding 2 more then, or we just go ahead and do it.
Exactly right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just to be clear, none of what we're proposing is actually addressing the existing building conditions that don't meet the educational needs guidelines of MSBA. They're strictly for the number of students that we're adding.
And so in option A, let's just be explicit about this. You have 8 existing. We're talking about only putting modulars at existing elementary schools. So to get to our 20 number, we would need to add 3 at each of those 4 facilities to get the 12 additional that we needed. So we're talking about adding 12 modular units across the district to meet our goal.
So 12 modular units gets us full day K without displacing Westlands.
Correct. In this one scenario, and like Brad said, we have quite a few other scenarios to go through that actually require fewer modulars with certain assumptions.
Are you doing financial comparisons on the 4 different options?
You'll see those
Okay, great.
momentarily. Yes.
Thank you.
All right, so moving forward, option A1 and A2 place the, I'm going to actually show you, place the modulars at each of these schools. So at Byam, we've placed the 3 modulars here. Again,
Go on, sorry.
Jason had noted that we need 3 at each of these schools. So if we place it here, we would actually need to also increase the parking. We would change the bus route so that the yellow is the bus routes, and because we're taking over some of that parking, we would move that to the other side. And then the blue is parent loop. This would keep traffic from flowing completely around the school and between the two buildings. If that was connected to the building, you would provide the hallway between the two.
Did you look at existing structures when you placed these units?
We looked at the existing sites and the opportunity to place them as close to exit
Yeah.
ways, yes.
So that's part of a playground, right, at Byam, and isn't there a,
There's a playground there.
isn't
There's a
there
playground there,
like
yes.
a gas regulator in the back?
I believe you're correct, but I believe it's over here.
Yeah.
It's on the back side.
It's
This
on the
is,
back side.
it's like right,
Okay.
think it's in
So
this area
so
here.
that won't have to be moved?
No.
Okay.
um,
So that bus route goes right through the old parking on the right?
yes, so to separate the buses and the cars, you would bring the buses up through here, create a bus loop, and allow them to come back this way.
Got it.
And then the cars would go this way. They are, there's still this traffic connection here, but you only have one way in and out of Byam.
And please remember that at this stage of the planning process, all of these site diagrams, right, are conceptual test fits and the minimum site improvements that would be necessary to sort of improve the safety of site circulation. You would have to go through a whole nother level of detail to really prove out whether or not any of these options are really viable.
Got it.
Yeah, but at the same time, this is what's going to get distributed, and this is what people are going to react to.
Sure.
Sure. Harrington being very similar to Byam, you would place the modulars on the opposite side over here. Same kind of connection if you look at Byam and Harrington. Here at Harrington, you would change the site circulation so that your pickup and drop-off was here and your buses could come out in the front. In this area, where our goal was to avoid the playground, but also the slope begins to drop off over there on the end. So we tried to keep it as close to the building as we could in the site. In South Row, this is actually a very flat area, and you have the existing modulars over here. These are two modulars here. We would be adding 3 on the same side of the building, and again, near the entrance or exit of the school. Site circulation works very well on this site if the cars come around the back and the exit and your cars and buses are completely separated. On Center School, we looked at 2 placements, one here adjacent to the gym and cafeteria, and the second here at the end of the building. And as you can see at Center School, we actually are connecting it in all of the scenarios, and that's because the center, again, is fully sprinklered and does have the ADA upgrades. At Center School, because of where this is located, we would actually create a ring road that extends out and beyond so that you could still have full site circulation around the building.
Emily, South Row Elementary School,
Mm-hmm.
the pod is connected, correct?
No, it is not.
Just a covered?
So in option A1, so this does not show the connection, so,
No, I apologize.
Yep.
What I meant to say is the old pod.
oh, the old pod is connected, yes, that's correct.
Why is the old pod?
It's under a different building code,
Okay. Grandfather?
yes.
Okay.
So when we start to compare the options and we start looking at the costs of connecting these modulars and not connecting the modulars, the plus or minus 58 million includes upgrading each of those 3 schools that don't currently have sprinklers or ADA accessibility. And because we know theoretically that you wouldn't be able to do all of that in 1 year, we also have included escalation over 3 years for those kinds of projects.
Just for those things, though, just for
Yes.
for the fire protection and for the accessibility upgrades. So that wouldn't include, for example, improvements to HVAC systems and those other types of things that would come in a much more holistic renovation type scenario.
But we're not, I mean, I don't think we're talking about renovating these schools at
I'm not-
the
I
end
know.
of the day. No, I mean, even after the major building projects, I don't think we're expecting to renovate all of the elementary schools. And basically what you're saying there is to bring the existing elementary schools up to code we're looking at $50 million.
Correct. But not to bring them into, to take care of antiquated systems or, technology improvements or anything like that. This is just in order to be able to make that connection, right? You get put into those triggers associated with accessibility and sprinklers. And we just want to make sure that everybody doesn't think exactly what you're saying, that the entire building would be renovated as a result of that. Because that wouldn't be
Nor
right.
would
I
the
see what
entire
you're saying.
building.
I'm concerned that we're $50 million in the hole at the elementary schools in terms of safety. Because, code is not just a good idea sometimes.
I think it's a travesty that we don't have sprinklers in all of our buildings. It's ridiculous, actually. And I have an overall problem, not just with that number, but I have an overall issue with temporary structures, because temporary structures become permanent pretty quickly in a town. Why would we replace them? We have great structures that can contain full-day kindergarten. So, anyway.
So this is the kind of dialogue that we had earlier today, and we're happy to be having it now, too. Option A2 is the 3 modulars at each of those building sites not connected to the existing buildings, and therefore those upgrades would not be required immediately. So if you choose to do them as part of the capital improvements, that's a whole different. So moving on, we have option B, which adds modular classrooms to 1 school, converts the Westlands community ed classrooms into kindergarten classrooms. There's 8 of those. And so we chose to look at both the center school, because again, it is fully sprinklered and has the upgrades as one of the possibilities for locating the 4 modular classrooms. And we also looked at placing them at the Westland schools, because that would allow us to connect the pre-K to the kindergarten, which was one of the goals that we had originally going into this project. When looking at this, they also asked us to take a look at, we would only need the 4, but they asked us, the group asked us to take a look at what would it take to add 6 modular classrooms, just so that you have the room for expansion. So as we go through each of those scenarios, we'll be looking again at both connecting and not connecting at the Westland School as part of the cost.
So just to be clear here, where option A was placing 12 modulars in the district, here we're taking advantage of 8 existing spaces at the Westland School. Yes, we're displacing the community ed programs, and there's not a clear destination for them in option B. But what that allows us to do is only place 4 modulars in the district as opposed to 12 to get to our target number of 20.
If you place the 6, would you still have a spot for ComEd?
You'll see in our option D that those 2 additional classrooms that were requested are over and above our 20, but they would not be quite enough to serve the community ed programs that exist today.
No, in D they do. In
In
doing this, they do not.
Right.
This is only 2 additional classrooms, which would allow for expansion of the pre-K program if they need to do that. So in looking at this, again, center school would place the 4 modulars as you have seen them on the end of the building and connect them to the building. And at Westlands, what we're looking at here is placing the 4 modulars here, and if it was the 6 modulars, we would just extend that space. This is on the existing playground, so the existing playground now becomes part of the center of the school, and somehow we would block off the playground from the drop-off zone. Parent drop-off zone would be designed to come around this way, and the buses would come around here and would create a bus loop on this other side. This would separate the parents and the buses, providing better site circulation. On this site, because we are adding teachers and students, and you are already limited on your parking, we would increase the parking on this site. So the increase in the parking is also included in the cost estimate that we will be showing you. At the Westland School, as I mentioned before, we can place this building approximately 10 feet from the existing building because of the construction of the gymnasium is already 1-hour rated wall. And to your point, Sal, if we want to provide covered walkway here, in speaking with the building inspector as well as the fire department, we can provide that cover. And whether or not there's some weather protection on the plastic sides or drop-down sides is something that we would have to discuss with them.
But that displaces community ed.
This option displaces community ed. And
What-
not included in our cost estimates is the relocation of community ed or any fitting out of wherever community ed might go.
When you say displaces community ed, are you just talking about the office space, or are you talking about the
No.
programs
The-
as well?
All of the programs.
And how many we're
So-
going to lose some of the programs
Yes.
presumably,
So
or-
Kindergarten
you will
ones.
lose the KCC program because the kindergarten students will now be full day as public students. That leaves approximately 5 spaces that she will need for, throughout the day, as well as an admin space. We spoke to Sherry about moving adult programs to the high school, which would occur after work. So she's looking for approximately 5 spaces plus administration.
And that would be for Lions Pride.
the
Do we have
extended
that in
day?
the system?
Pardon me?
Do we have that anywhere?
Not in this option. We do take a look at it in option D. But in this option, it's not considered as part of this option. So, option B1, which is the 4 modular classrooms connected to the center school, which includes site improvements to the center and the conversion of the Westlands classrooms to kindergarten. And again, because Westland is already a school, upgrades are not required here. We would just be moving the students into those classrooms. So there's no improvements to that building. Sprinklers or handicap accessibility or anything to that building. And that would be approximately $2.6 million for those 4 modular classrooms and the site work at Center School.
And what would the 6 be?
We did not look at 6 at Center. We only looked at placing
I'm
6
sorry.
at Westlands.
Oh, it's 2.6 for just the work at
At Center
Center.
School, yes.
Okay.
In option B, we looked at placing those modulars at the Westland School. So we looked at both connected and not connected, and we looked at 4 and 6. So here, 2A and 2B are connected and not connected, and you can see the difference, approximately 13.7 and approximately 2.9 for 4 modular classrooms on the Westland site.
But the not connected would include a covered walkway.
Yes. As well as the improvements to the site for the parking. Looking at 6 modular classrooms at the Westland School, again, connected and not connected, including the improvements to the parking, approximately 14.8 and approximately 4.0 million. Any questions about option B?
Please, I apologize. In option 2D, just go over what that solves.
So this provides the 4 classrooms that we need for the kindergarten program, plus provides 2 additional classrooms for the expansion of the pre-K program.
So, at Westlands, for $4 million, taking into consideration that it displaces community ed, and we have to solve that problem. But for $4 million, we can have pre-K all taken care of and kindergarten all taken care of in one location.
Yes, but kindergarten will still remain 2 classrooms at each of your other schools.
Yes.
You'll have 8 classrooms within the Westlands building and 4 classrooms in the modulars, or 4 to 6 classrooms in the modulars.
Are you
$4 million.
Sorry.
For
Yes, sir.
$4 million.
Are you projecting any increases in the pre-K?
So
population.
the 8 classrooms that already exist at Westlands would satisfy what's being projected for pre-K based on the NESDEC analysis, 142 students. But the director of special ed has speculated that there may be a need for increases in sections over and above that number, and so that's
NESDEC sees this immediate plateau that I don't understand. The NESDEC projections going forward don't look anything like the prior 3 or 4 years with what's happening with that population.
And that may be true. It's a much more difficult population to project because of the nature of the need and it being in service of special needs students only. But we can only operate on the data that we have, and that's part of the reason why we've been asked to explore this 6 modular solution at Westlands as
Okay.
well.
Right,
To-
I
to-
think that's why that's important, because there appears to be a weakness in the NESDEC projection, and so I think we need to have some kind of contingency plan in case.
And
that
right, and that's
doesn't
what this
bear out.
6 modular classroom
Right.
scenario does.
Okay.
And Emily, the 4 million, are you buying the modulars? Are you leasing the modulars? Are you leasing refurbished modulars?
This is under a purchase program. What we found from our studies is that your break-even point is approximately 5 years, and knowing that you have a 6-year timeline at minimum, we've looked at purchase of the modulars.
This includes all the installation. This is
Yes.
on the ground working.
Yes.
Can I just jump in to Mike's point? It is very difficult, the NESDEC projections or any projection in particular, when you're dealing with the younger kids coming into the projection. But what's even more challenging for us is, even if we have a good handle on the number of actual, say, 3- and 4-year-olds at that level, or that age, how many will actually be special needs, which is the complicating factor, because we're only providing services for those particular kids at this point in time. So that is a tough number for anyone to try to project on, but we are certainly seeing the needs rising year to
Right.
year.
It's not just them though,
Rated.
right, because it's an integrated classroom. So the
But
number,
we're only-
the increase goes at twice the rate of the diagnosis.
As you increase in special needs students goes up, the peer model students,
Right. Also.
the regular obviously goes up. We would only take in the peers, given the number of special needs students we have.
Right.
But it's that special need number that's kind of driving the whole thing. And that is, it's very tough to gauge.
Dr. Lane, teach me, why wouldn't we lease these, even if the break-even was 5 years, as opposed to coming up with that money up front? Why wouldn't we stretch it over 6 years? It would be less of a burden up front, and we don't know if opportunities exist from the state, from increasing our budget where money's readily available. Why would we put all the money up front when we could just kick that can down the road for the next 6 years? Only one more year past breaking. Why would we do that?
Well, I mean, from a financial standpoint, if we're looking at a break-even point being about 5 years, we would hope if everything goes well, we'd be in a new building in, say, the 6 or 7 years. If it ever went a little bit longer than that, that would prolong it. I don't necessarily think the 4 million would be a one-time cost. You would probably bond that,
Yeah.
and you'd be making some kind of an annualized payment over however many years, similar to a lease payment. I think it just comes down to, if you're going to actually have them on site for more than the 5 years, you may as well own them and give yourself some flexibility with additional space even after their need. So if we did open up another school in, say, 6 or 7 years, and we're able to move that population into the school, that then the district would have paid the same amount of money to lease them anyway. We may as well own them. We know they have a 20 to 25-year life expectancy, and we could possibly repurpose them for something else. You're going to be paying the same kind of site acquisition and setup costs, whether they're leased or owned. The company's going to want to get their money back on that. And again, if they're there for more than the 5 years, you may as well own them.
Okay, thank you.
Just a question on the module. Let's say we do move out, or if we do decide to keep them or not keep them. Is there a resale value if we were to purchase them at the end?
I believe there is, but I
mean,
can't.
Depends on the market.
We've seen them.
Yeah, I'm sure everything depends on something, but
They are bought and sold.
a town like Drake could say, okay, well, we need a modular. We'll give you X amount of money for it. So there could be a return on that. Not what we spent, obviously, but.
Oh, if
Maybe
we
there's an
own them,
opportunity
yeah.
to purchase refurbished modules.
Right. And that's a good thought. Still don't like modulars.
I mean,
but-
if we're only going to keep them for 6 years, why do we have to buy, the Cadillac? Why can't we buy something that's going to last us for 6 years? Something refurbished. We don't have to spend too much. Is there
Well,
a
I think-
huge cost difference between refurbished and brand new in these modules?
It really depends on what's available,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of people that are using these things right now. And so, it really depends on when somebody might be getting done with a project that they've been using them for swing space, and they might be there. But
could be.
it's very tough to count on something like that. So, it really depends, and there's a fair number of them that you have there, depending on which option you choose.
But I think it just begs the point that when it comes time, if we decided to go with this, we just look at what's new versus what's out there and what we can find. And then we just make the best decision. But I think it's a good point.
So, moving forward, we looked at option C. And option C is looking for rental space somewhere in the community. When we looked at this, we ran some numbers with Jason and determined that you would need 12 sections of classrooms, and we actually reduced the size of each of those classrooms to approximately 1,000 square feet, as opposed to the 1,200 square feet that we were looking at for the modular classrooms for kindergarten. We'd keep the 2 sections per grade at each of the schools. And when we actually looked at the 41,000 square feet that we think that you would need, we looked at providing special education, art, music, some place for the kids to play, a small gym, multi-purpose room, which would also serve as your cafeteria, a small kitchen, not a cooking kitchen, but probably a warming kitchen. We know that you would need a nurse, an administration space, and you would need janitorial and delivery services as well, so some back-of house space. We did not include a library, and again, we minimized the other spaces as much as we could. So we came up with 41,000 square feet that you would need for rental space. And based on what we heard from our team, we believe that rental space within this area would go for about $5 to $8 a square foot. And we know that you would need it for a minimum of 6 years. So the number, the $1.9 to $2.7 million includes some money for fit-out space of that. So you have your rental for the $205,000 to $328,000, and then you would also have some money for fit-out and furnishing for that space. Again, we could only make some guesses. We didn't include any operational costs for this kind of space, but we used the information that we had available to us.
We don't include operational costs for any of the options.
2.7 million gets you 41,000 square feet with a fit-up and pays the rent.
Based on those assumptions.
Are the nets involved in that too? Is
Or
that
what?
a gross number?
That's a gross square footage number, yes.
So, that's a tight number.
Well, if you go back just one slide, Michelle, the assumptions we were operating under to generate this square footage is that this isn't exactly apples to apples to a new facility or even putting students in facilities that you have around the district. This is, what are the bare bones that we would need to operate an elementary school with just kindergarten in it when there are 12 sections of students to serve. And so, for example, assuming that you don't have a separate gym and cafeteria, that a single space could serve both of those functions, that you don't have a full-blown library for this population. Perhaps there are classroom libraries as a square footage savings solution. And so certainly this number could grow higher, but we were directed to try to generate something that could be functional as an elementary school that serves kindergarten, but as small as possible.
Everything you just said, I agree. I just feel a little concerned with the $5 to $8 of a gross number in a location that's accessible to everybody in Chelmsford. In other words, we can't put these kids in a warehouse that it's $3 square foot, triple net, the nets are $4. There's your $8 number. This has to be a location that's probably right off the highway, or probably has ample parking, it's accessible, that means it's going to be a little bit more desirable. I'm just not sure about the $8, that's all.
And I think you may be right on that. We put that number in just based on some discussions here, but I share that. And then also included, if you go to that next slide, we included, I think it was $100 a square foot for a TI number.
Oh, that was my next question I was going to ask you. Of the 2.7, of the 41,000, how much was TI? So approximately $400,000, $410,000, you were going to invest into the real estate, correct?
Correct.
It was $100 per, so.
$410,000.
You define TI for me? What's TI?
Tenant improvements.
Okay.
So
Got it.
they said for $410,000, we can fit 41,000 square feet up in order to handle the classrooms for the kids, correct?
That's
And
correct.
again, that's just a very,
It's a-
you know,
Yeah,
kind of raw number, but it gives you, you know, if this is something, you know, it gives you a ballpark.
sure, sure.
And then you can start to look at that comparatively. And then if it's something you want to pursue further, then I think you can get into some more in-depth analysis as to what the rental market is. And this also includes, I think, an MSBA assumption of $1,200 a student for FF&E. And because this is temporary, we figured that would probably help you on some of your basic, very basic.
Can you teach
Tech-
everybody what you just said, please?
Furniture.
No, I know, teach us about the contribution.
Well, that's currently, okay, as part of the MSBA program, that's the number that they use when you're building a new school
Yeah,
to go and fit out for furnishings,
Okay.
FF&E. And so they also have a kind of a sister number, if you will, for technology, which is also $1,200 a student. So here, we just put the $1,200 a student in because it was temporary,
sure.
to give you some type of accommodation and use some basis for an FF&E, okay, portion that was, obviously you're gonna expend in any of these, as well as some very basic technology infrastructure, because again, it's temporary.
But to be clear, the MSBA would not be participating.
Yeah, this is,
Right.
that, we're just using that as kind of a baseline assumption.
So we would have to come up with that.
Would we even be eligible for state assistance?
Not for any
Not
of
for
this.
None of this.
None of these options have state assistance.
That's
So
correct.
the MSB, whatever that was, will not, it's not going to affect anything, so we don't need to worry about it. It's baseline.
Well, wait, we're not gonna get help if we install modular classrooms to put kindergarten in?
That's correct.
We're not eligible for a kindergarten startup grant?
Not for temporary. Anything, okay, that doesn't have a 50-year useful life is ineligible.
Yeah, space-wise, they wouldn't. We potentially could apply for the grant for startup, some furnishings, things like that. But the MSBA won't be participating in
Not the
any.
MSBA. I'm talking
Anymore.
about the state.
And the state,
But the state won't
The
participate
state
at
has
all.
two kindergarten grants, right? One is for startups, and the other is sustaining.
The
And
sustaining, correct.
sustaining's gone away
Right.
this year, but the startup still exists, right?
Correct, but that won't pay for any physical site acquisition or modulars or anything like that. It'll pay for your materials, for your
For
classroom.
the furnishings.
Furnishings, potentially.
Right, so this does have a cost, this option has a cost built into it
There's about a $200,000 cost built into it.
that
260.
would not necessarily be, or that we'd get state assistance for with the modular approaches, the non-rental approaches. Is that right?
Can you say that one more time?
So there's a cost built in here, the cost to the town that we'd have to absorb to fit out the buildings, basically, that we could get state relief for if we did modulars instead of renting.
No.
No.
There's a cost that they built into this factor, but it's built into all the scenarios for so much of the furnishings in the, in each of the, whether it's modulars or it's a lease or whatnot. We can apply to the state for that kindergarten grant. That would be in addition to all of this money. That's not supplementing any of
Okay,
this.
but the fact that we're renting would not necessarily impair our ability to apply
No.
for that grant. Okay.
No, renting or using modulars wouldn't affect that
Oh,
grant at
okay,
all.
so that's a wash.
It's a programming type grant.
Okay.
Dr. Lang, this scenario puts all the kindergarten kids together
one place.
in one place.
No.
It does not.
Oh,
We still maintain the
It's
two,
incremental.
the two rooms in each of the
You still
existing
have
schools.
have to
Oh,
have the
wow.
two rooms.
Yeah, this is, because we need the 20, so we've got 8 right now, because we've got 2 in each of the 4 buildings. This is the other 12 all being located together.
This is half your kindergarten population.
it's still better.
So is it safe to say, just two questions. Would we, in your experience, would you want all the kids together, or is this split scenario? Because if you're gonna go for 41, there's an expense for the existing kindergarten. Would you go and bring all the kids together? Is that the optimal way for the kids to all be together, all full-day K? Or, in your experience, it's okay to have X amount of classrooms with 3/4 of the kids here and a balance of the kids there? Do you follow what I'm trying to say? What's best for the kids? All together, or this scenario?
Now, in my opinion, the absolute best case scenario would be for the kids to be at their individual school. So if a child was going to go to the Byam for their career, they'd be at the Byam for their career. So you would actually have your 4 or 5 classrooms at each school. I think that's going to be cost prohibitive, given the scenario, or just given the reality of this thing. So then, you know, I don't know, I really hadn't thought about, because we already have those classrooms in the buildings, I hadn't thought about pulling the 8 out of the existing schools and putting all 20 together.
The only reason I say that, Dr. Lang, is who gets the lottery ticket that gets to stay at Byam? Why does my kid have to go to the new school?
Right,
And why does your kid get to stay at Byam? Because you only have 2 classes.
right.
So
Oh,
up
no,
to 40
it's-
Well,
kids.
you can ask the same question about the Westlands.
Exactly.
Right.
No, you're 100%
Any
right.
of those alternate spots, it's going to be.
Honestly, at this point, I think in this town, with the parents that are up and coming with children that are about to go to kindergarten, don't really care where the kids go to kindergarten. I think parents are fed up with the fact that we haven't come up with a solution in this town in how many years? So I understand your point, and my point is that I think parents would gladly make the sacrifice to put their children in a commercial building for a year versus the Byam or the Wesley, wherever, doesn't matter. I don't think.
Yeah, but we're not
I
talking
think-
about a year, we're talking about 6
We're talking about
years.
60, we're talking about,
And-
right. And when you look at it that way, though, but you're not talking about a child being in that classroom for 6 years. You're talking about 6 sets of children. You know, we did the parade route the other day, and I had people yelling at me from the crowds, full-day kindergarten, full-day kindergarten. I honestly, and when I look at this solution, I say, okay, even if this is $4 million, it doesn't require building a modular, which avoids the whole, well, we already have a space, let's keep it. I think it's a viable solution. So I think cost-wise, even if it is more, it's probably the more viable of the two that I've seen. I don't want to put a modular anywhere. I don't want to stick something temporary in the ground, because as soon as you do it, people put a stake in it, and that's where it is. And I have a technical question. Can we have somebody turn down do we have anybody that can turn down the volume in the speakers? Because we're getting like, feedback.
Are you getting feedback? Yeah, when we're done talking, I'll sneak out and do
All
that.
right, thank you.
It is, can I just say one thing, though? It is going to be an issue, because as a, like, even once we got this in place, if this was the case,
Yeah.
parents do want full-day K, but parents do want K in their own schools. So there's going to have to be a whole
Yeah.
second discussion around, you know, lotteries and how we would actually coordinate that.
Down.
Or did they turn it
Yeah.
down? All right, because, see, you just have to speak and people do things.
Last
That-
name is Moses.
Yeah, don't get used to that.
That is going to be, that is going to be an issue, though.
I got it. I understand, and I think that is I don't think that is an administration issue. I think it's a political issue where you go to the town, you say, look, you know, we've gone without full-day kindergarten for the entirety of this school district since it's existed. We have an opportunity for the next 6 years. It's not a perfect solution, but in 7 years, my daughter missed full-day kindergarten, and it's just the sacrifice that we had to make, and then, which is why I'm here.
Well, my question is this, John. My question is, with the constraints that we have in the elementary schools, if we were to take out those 2 classrooms, give them back to the elementary schools for their art programs or some of their other programs that
Right.
we heard people talk so passionately about, and we were to rent more space,
That's a good point.
now we can have all the kids together, and the elementary schools are able to expand because they're going to pick up 2 more classrooms. Why, is that a crazy idea?
It's not a crazy idea.
Is
If
it-
we
is
think
it-
we can get the money to do it, if we can get it voted on and through, you know, FinCom and through town meeting, it's a viable idea.
So that would project out to like 4 or 5 million. if
Well,
you- if
it's
you
interesting you said
Add
that.
another 8.
It's not always incremental, you know, with space. Sometimes there's opportunities to, you know, take advantage, you know, you can get this, it doesn't necessarily mean if I wanted to double the amount of classrooms, I have to go to 82,000.
So I can give you an example. 'Cause
Please.
We looked
I think
at
we do.
a scenario where a community was trying to figure out what they would do for swing space during construction. And ultimately, when we looked at a number of very similar types of options. And, you know, the best thing that ultimately came out was to find a place that had, it was actually a parochial school that had been closed down, that they were able to go and refit, if you will, to make it meet their program. We looked at a warehouse type space, and, doing a very minimalist TI to that, and it ended up being very expensive. Just from, when we looked at this in significantly more detail, because, they were faced with, we have to do it because we're doing the school and where are we going to put the kids? So, just the experience that we've had on that is, it really depends on, what you have available for, stock, and, what that rental is and what type of shape it's in. Because, at the end, these are, they're little kids that are in there, and you can, you have to make those types of accommodations for it. You would go and think, well, but if it has a toilet room in there, we should be all set. But it's not, because these are little kids.
Yeah.
And so it ends up being a little more expensive than you think when you do, fit out of a more open plan warehouse type space. So I don't know what the stock is available here in Chelmsford.
I mean, all we hear, and correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, all we hear is the elementary schools are, the sides are expanding. I mean, imagine if we could give them back 2 more classrooms. Might not be the cure-all, but it certainly would help us for the next 5 or 7 years.
I think that's a point in favor, but I think there's some other things. You're not looking at any outdoor space at all connected to this?
Depends.
We don't know where
Depends
this
on the
building
space, right.
exists. We don't know if this building exists.
So
We
we
were-
could have a building that could be perfect in town.
You
And we
could.
just go out and look and find it, or there could be nothing
Exactly.
at all. Right.
We
It
were
could be-
asked to take a look at this, and we were given
How,
the,
okay, how big's the gym?
In the assumptions we built in, it would be a 6,000 square foot gym, which is a typical MSBA elementary school. It's big enough to have a high school competition court with a little bit of runoff space, no bleachers, right? And in this case, it would be doubling as a cafeteria. So scheduling the space.
So you're gonna run 12 lunches through it and still have 2 recesses, a morning and afternoon recess, and
with
some kind of
6,000 square
PE?
feet, you would have more than, you wouldn't have 18 students, so it wouldn't be 12 lunches. It would be 2 or 3.
Right.
So
Right. It would likely be large enough to have 2 lunches, but obviously you couldn't schedule PE classes in that space when you're setting up for lunch, when you're having lunch, and when you're tearing down lunch.
Are you
And
making any assumptions about lunch preparation?
we assumed a warming kitchen.
Yeah.
Right.
that's
and
Most of we have
Again.
schools now that don't have full kitchens.
Again, this is a temporary solution, and here's my long-term concern, is that if we get temporary full-day K anywhere, is that the next thing is, how do we get the facilities to the next level? How do we get to build the new building that we're gonna need at some point? So what if that doesn't happen? What if that gets voted down, and then what? So,
Just one last thing on this option. What we're trying to do here is to create some level of parity
right.
between, what this option might resemble and what you would have at your, similar spaces at your existing elementary schools. Is it a 1-for-1? No, but it's trying to get you closer.
Yeah.
So it's not just classrooms, here where you have that, but you do have to take into account when you're looking, if you go down this, things like, it's not just the space, it's like, do you have any recreational space? What do you have for parking? How would you actually accommodate, buses and site circulation on that, which you have already existing at some of those spaces. So, that's why I was talking about this other community. In order to make some of those things work, it's a tough find,
Yeah.
to be honest with you, it's a tough find. But it may be here, we don't know.
And a lot of it, honestly, and I've been through this experience too, it just depends on what stock is available at what given time. Because we could be looking for a building for 41,000 square feet and be paying X number of dollars for it, where if a landlord is actually sitting on 50 or 60,000 square feet and he's not going to be able to use the rest of that building, you could get some kind of a better cost because, he'd rather just do the build out once, be done with it, and have one tenant instead of having 2 or 3 or having a space that's just not
That's exactly how I feel,
marketable.
Jay.
But we don't know I don't know what's out there for space, and I don't think we would know that until we really, kind of got to this point and even wanted to vet this further, and then started talking to some of the realtors and just taking a look at what kind of space is even out there, whether it's 40 or it's 60 square feet. I don't know what's out there.
I just think I'm trying to put my arms around what's best for the kids.
Yeah.
With this 2 classrooms at each elementary school, and then the balance in some other location. It's immaterial, Westlands or a warehouse that you described. So it doesn't seem like a whole hell of a lot more money, and it solves some problems if you put all the kids together. Am I?
Well, I was just going to say, to John's point, I mean, I think the other thing we can't lose sight of is that this is a short-term solution.
Right.
That this can't be something that we go into and 10, 15 years down the line, we're still doing it. This was really intended to be a part of the bigger plan. And the bigger plan is going to come also, where are we going to put these kids? And there were different scenarios we looked at. But if the scenario that ultimately goes forward is, building a new school that would have kindergarten and say high school together, whatnot, if that goes forward, well, if they're going to be together anyway, then, maybe this is something to vet out further, to have them all together now, because temporarily they're going to be moving into the space anyway. I think we were just trying to look at, any scenario that was out there, taking a look at minimal to, maximum costs to just accommodate these 20 classrooms. And one of the scenarios was, if we already have the 8, to continue using those 8 and just be looking for 12. But, this certainly could be pushed out further, just based on what's actually out there stock-wise.
So I think we got to look at what we can find. If we decided to go with this option, we look what we can find. And if we can find a great deal on 60,000 square feet, it changes the game a little bit.
Well, I think we need to, if that's the case, then that needs to happen sooner rather than later, if we want to make a final recommendation in August. One of my concerns with this is that it is not a bounded cost. And that I don't think we can assume that we're going to be done in 6 years.
Right.
And this cost continues to grow every single year. Also, even if we find the perfect space, we are at unless there are 2 perfect spaces in town which we can play off against each other, we're at the mercy of the landlord when the lease expires. Mm-hmm. And that's a big risk in the future, I think.
I apologize, Michael. You would only make this deal as part of the whole picture, right? We're going to make some recommendations.
Not at all. We have to, if we're going to have full-day kindergarten for the 2017-18 school year, we need to be working on that. August is not an inappropriate time to start that.
Yeah.
We need to have a plan. At that point, we're not even going to have a final report on what kind of a building project we want to pursue. Once we get that, then we have to sit down and start working it out with the MSBA, and we still got to get it passed.
Why couldn't you lease a building, Michael? Why couldn't you lease a building with options, right? Why couldn't you go to a landlord and say, listen, give me a 6-year deal with an option for 4 years? Now you have 10 years, and after your 6th year, we're in trouble. We're not going to be able to get to where, now you could start thinking of.
I agree,
Okay,
but all of a
here comes
sudden,
modulars
your cost has just gone up by 80% or whatever, if you have to go out to 10 years from 6. That's what I mean about this not being a bounded cost.
I wouldn't accept
If
that
we
contract.
if we buy modulars,
Yeah.
then we know what our cost is, right? It's a fixed cost. With something like this, every year that we don't get something built, either that we don't get it passed, or that we don't get it completed, or that something else goes wrong, is another year that adds on to the total cost overall. So
Unless the quality of this concept of putting all the kids together and opening them up more space in the elementary schools is a good idea, because there's an inherent cost for that too, right? If we have to expand the elementary school.
One of my concerns about this plan is the fact that the cost is not bounded, so we don't really know the final cost.
It's not a fixed cost.
It's- right.
Right. So you're basing it on assumptions at some point and saying, we think.
Why is it not a fixed cost if I know I have a 10-year lease with an option, or 7-year
Well,
lease?
Wouldn't we know-
it's fixed over the 10 years, but you don't know what happens beyond that. And again, it should be a 6 years if everything goes according to plan. In many ways, that's a problem for other school committees to deal with. But I think it's something that has to be taken into
You'll be
account
back.
when we evaluate different.
You'll be back. That's fine.
When we evaluate these different plans.
I think we just need to look at both options. I think we should probably just table it and just say, we're going to have to look at all the options anyway. And I understand your point. I like the lease option better. I don't want to stick another modular on the ground. I really don't.
Don't you have the same problem with the modules? You don't want to live in modules. Why would you want to live in leased space? You're going to have the same problem.
Lease space is better space.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, but
It depends on the space, but I still want to hear the last
Really
option.
true.
Not necessarily. But here's the thing, if we don't find a space to lease anyway, it becomes one of these other options, right? So if we go out, we can't find the space,
Right.
we need to find something else. So I think we should see the other option, which is D. I think it's the last option.
It is the last option.
And then we all can sit in a room and duke it out.
In option D, we were asked to look at preserving community education at the Westland School. So option A1 and A2 with the modular classrooms at each of those buildings, they do preserve community ed at the Westland School. And so does option C, which is the rental space. Community ed can remain. Option D1 looks at additions of 12 modular classrooms, and that would be 216 students adding on to the center school. So we would be looking at adding all the modular classrooms to one school, and that would be the center school.
Each module is 4 classrooms? Are those the ones you're looking at?
No, each modular is one classroom. So we're looking,
Oh.
I'm sorry, we're looking at 12 modular
12.
classrooms.
Got it.
They
Okay.
wouldn't all have to be
Keeping the two
kindergarten though,
classrooms at
right?
every elementary school.
Keeping the 2.
Yes.
See, yeah.
So this is just one option that we took a close look at because we were asked to, what would you do if you could put them all at one school, the center school being the most obvious school for that kind. And we would be adding 216 students to that school. And so when you look at that, that would increase that population to 646 students at one school, and 252 of those students would be kindergartners.
But they don't all have to be kindergartners, right?
252 of them would be, yes.
Why? Why wouldn't you just make it a super school so that it draws equally from all the classes in town? Right? You wind up with that many more students there, but it goes back to the idea that once a student enters in kindergarten, they stay in their home school.
You'd have to rezone, we didn't think about that, you'd have to rezone the whole district.
Yeah. We're going to have to rezone the whole district under anything except option 1.
Why are you rezoning
Well,
the
no,
whole district with the
not for
rental
6
space?
years.
No, you're going to have different zones. If you're sending all the, if you're keeping two classrooms at each existing elementary and then expanding in other areas, you're still going to have, in some ways it's going to be more confusing because you're going to have different zones depending on whether your family is a kindergarten family or a first grade family.
Only if you keep the two schools. If you combine everybody, now you're not rezoning
Agreed.
everybody.
So if we call that C2 or.
So if you did have this super school option, you would, looking at center school, the number of students that you would be adding
would
onto
go
that
to
school,
646.
you would also require additional administration, additional and special education, an additional art room, music spaces, additional lunchtime. So you would then need to add on to the center school to accommodate these
Can you
others.
just go to, what's the number slide? We do this, we do the number slide.
So we didn't do a number slide to that one because we didn't think it was a viable option.
Really smart not to do it.
Yeah, you're probably better off on that one.
So the last and final option is D2, and that is to add 4 modular classrooms to the center school, convert the 8 classrooms at the Westlands to K classrooms, and add 6 modular classrooms to the Westlands for community ed. That allows community ed to remain, share the facilities and resources that they are currently sharing with the Westlands pre-K school, and this solution combines B1 and B2B for a total cost of $5.5 million and looks like that.
All right,
And it looks like what?
Could you
Where's-
give me
Yes.
that?
So
Could you
you
give
would-
me the money?
Yes,
Shot
5.5.
once more,
5.5. So you'd be adding the 4 modular classrooms to the center school, and then you would be adding the 6 modular classrooms here to the Westland. So it's 2 projects on 2 sites, $5.5 million, plus or minus.
I just don't like them. They're never gonna go away.
Do you have even
That
just
right
a
there.
ballpark figure on the 12 mods?
On the 12 mods?
Yeah, at center, the super school model.
No, but I could get you that number.
My
Well,
gut tells me.
what our programmatic analysis suggested that it wouldn't be just 12 modulars at that point.
Yeah,
That you would actually
right.
have to
Yeah,
be
you'd
adding
have to do-
additional modulars to serve the extra art room and the extra special education. And oh, by the way, the cafeteria is already too small
That's
for
too
the
small for
population that
now,
it
as
has.
it is now.
And now you're going to add 262 kids to it, making it even more undesirable.
Here's my thing. The day you put down enough modulars to solve the full day kindergarten problem is the day the building project dies. I'm telling you, if we approve modulars, it's done. Town meeting, it's never gonna get voted on.
It's not going to approve if you're leasing them, though,
Right.
because they're going to want to get out of the lease.
And those were all detailed, right, I see it, but I'm telling you, put modulars on the ground, they're gonna say, well, you have full-day kindergarten, you don't need these buildings. Who cares if we're overcrowded? We got it, you've solved your problem. And for 15 years, we're not gonna build a thing. So, that's just my gut feeling on it.
But what's the option? That we don't have kindergarten for 10 years?
No,
No.
that's not the option.
I think we have to do the minimal amount with those modulars if we're gonna do them, or it's the lease space. Like, the last option to me is just not gonna,
We're going to have modules.
we're gonna have modulars, I got it, but that cannot be the solution to the problem. Because we're dead in the water for the building project. Dead in the water.
So the last,
Really young to be so cynical. I think we are going to have to make a positive case at some point that
Of course.
that we actually need either a new building or a major renovation project.
So
And I don't disagree that if you threaten people with the stick of an unbonded lease eating up their operating budget, that might make it a little easier. But I think really I don't like to think in that way. I want to think about how do we put forward the positive case that our children are worth investing in.
Sure.
It's time. We've not put any really significant money into this district for
Right.
20, 30 years. And we are $50 million in the hole on safety at the elementary schools alone.
Right.
It's time.
60.
It's time to put some money into the schools in
Agreed.
town. So we have to come. It's going to be a challenge.
It's
You're
gonna be
right
a full-throated
that
political effort.
There will
It is
be
not-
there will be some people, maybe even many people, who say you've
Right.
got the modulars, you don't need anything else.
And here's my point, is that it's going to require a full-throated political effort. It's going to require turnover at the town meeting level. It's just not going to be an easy thing. So once we get full-day kindergarten, which is going to happen, we're going to find a way to make that happen. The next thing is the building project. How do we build the building that solves all the other problems that we have? And it's going to take Sal doing his part and going out and shaking hands and getting some of the younger generation to run for town meeting and to unseat some of these people that are really negative about the school system, because it's endemic in this town. And I'm sorry, it is. And it's not negative, it's real. And I've had to experience it, I get yelled at all the time, that all we want is people's money, so.
Brad, Emily,
Lana should have come tonight.
Michelle, Jason, is
No,
there
she missed that
one or
one. She got a
two
quote.
guys, filter all this, but here's the one or two recommendations that you guys have? You've been doing this a long time. And then I'd also like to hear from Gary, I see Persichetti over there, only because I'd like to, you talked about those modules before, Gary, and if it's okay, I'd like to hear your input. If you're not ready, I understand.
I'm part of this study as well, so I've been involved in all of
Come on up.
it.
Well, I just want to hear your one or two.
I don't know if there's a lot of different things that you're trying to balance out here. You're trying to balance out things like, do we want them all in one place or do we want them spread out? We're trying to go and balance out, we don't want to put in modulars because we're worried that it'll end up being a long-term solution, and therefore there'll be no capital project that'll be allowed by the town. But ultimately, I guess, you guys need to look at this and figure out what's the best solution for you when you try and strike that balance. My personal opinion is that unless you're able to go out there and have, in pretty short order, being able to find that, this spot that's available from a leasing perspective is even possible.
Right.
I think that can, get taken off the table pretty darn quick, or put on the table pretty darn quick. And then you have to deal with, your own question as to whether or not, you want to potentially live with an unbounded cost. But I think that, we see an awful lot of people using modulars for lots of different solutions. And, they're not perfect, but they work.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And, you guys are gonna have to come to grips with the kind of the political decision of whether or not, you don't wanna go and put in modulars, which are a viable solution, because you're worried about the fact that it might impact the future building project or something else. That's not a design team decision, that's a decision that you guys need to be able to, wrestle to the ground. So it's hard for us to give you a rock solid answer on that, Sal. But we do see, modulars being used a lot as, temporary, quote unquote, solutions. And I think, we were retained, really not looking at this particular issue, but I think it's a good discussion, but really to look at, and that's what that slide talks about there, is a master plan. And when we think about things like master plan, we think about not just what has to happen today, but what has to happen over a long horizon. And then, that's the job of the design team and the educational planner, et cetera. And I think this does that. It addresses how do we solve what we were asked to do, which is a short-term, problem with K, and how do you solve it? And then it goes and says, well, what are we going to do to solve a bunch of these other problems? And, there are a whole bunch of options that were laid out for that. That hasn't quite been decided. But then that last green arrow there is, well, even with that, that's not going to solve all of your district problems, but it's giving you a plan. And so you guys are going to have to come to grips with, how you want to plan that. We're going to be pretty good and want to be helpful and try and feed that information with you, and we'll bounce it off. But some of these decisions, and I'm not trying to shy away from it, they're just really personal choice decisions.
Yeah.
And balancing, politics and what you think you can and can't get done, and what's more important, short-term or long-term.
The only point I'm
Which
making.
I could give you a more rock-solid answer for that, but, if I would have my own opinion if I was sitting as part of your school committee, but we're not in that position.
Sal and I have made a promise, and it was both of our campaigns, that we were going to get full-day kindergarten. And that's kind of what we ran on. That's what we're both pushing for. And if it has to be modular, it has to be modular. But it has to be presented as part of a longer-term solution. That's my only point. I don't want to get stuck on the ground and be like, well, it's solved, because it's really not. So there are bigger problems within the small problem. And I think we're going to come through on it. We just got to figure out what the right way to do it.
I agree. I think we have an opportunity here to solve a couple of our problems. One of the things is I think Dr. Lane's going to have a heck of a time figuring out who gets to stay local and who has to get bused
Right.
to a location. Number one. Number two, I think this is an opportunity for the existing elementary schools, and every time I go and listen to one or listen to a parent, it's always the same. We don't have enough space.
Yep.
Our art program or our music program, we're on carts. We need, they don't say a lot of room, a little bit more room.
Right.
So imagine being able to give up or give them back 2 more classrooms and then grabbing and taking all these kids and putting them in one location. So if you're going to rent 41,000 square feet to solve a problem, why not rent 61,000 square feet and solve multiple problems? Now the only question is, which I feel extremely confident that we could find something in this town. We have an abundance of office space right now.
When's Kronos moving out?
Well, so I just think, to your point and to Michael's point, if you're very concerned about modules, which I agree with you, I think that's a very articulate statement to make, very, very smart. Doesn't this put the pressure on the town to make a decision? Because with modulars, it's easy to say we don't have to worry about it because those modulars go for 20 years. But with leased space, there's an end. We have to solve this problem within 6 years, 7 years, 10 years. Doesn't that put pressure back on the town to make a decision where they have we have no leverage? I can't believe I'm saying this on public. We have no
It's the only
leverage.
place we're allowed to, Sal, so.
No. We have no leverage if we put them in modulars because they can just, town meeting can just say, we're not giving you the money. Now what are you going to do?
Jay, when does the vote for
Tell me what.
the
Push
long-term
back, Mike.
project come? April, right?
No, and what we're going to,
MSBA.
well, we need to submit an application to the MSBA next winter.
Right.
So it's sometime, February to April time period. So we'll be submitting our application prior to April town meeting.
Okay.
So we're going to need to, at fall town meeting, assuming there's no other special town meetings between, really present this overarching plan. And I think we owe it to the town to come back and report out our findings and our recommendations. In this K piece is a piece of that larger plan.
Okay.
And so we need to kind of solidify ourselves what direction we want to go in over the next month or so with the K, to have Doran Whittier put that in the final overarching plan that then gets presented to us in early September. And then we're going to town meeting with both in October. But we need to be working, once we kind of figure out what we want to do with the K in August and September, we really do need to start our planning right then.
Right.
On, looking at spaces and options and all those kind of things.
Michael, you were going to say something?
Well, I think that's it, really. That full day K is not the only challenge facing this district, right? The elementary schools are not the only schools that need a serious investment. We have issues almost as large at the middle school level. The high school is 50 years old. This is not going to be the only thing we do, and so I think we don't need to look at it as just a one-shot thing. This is going to be a much larger project, and we need to think about how the pieces do go together. I'm not unalterably opposed to renting the space, and I think there are some good things to say, especially about putting everybody together, both in terms of relieving the stress in the classrooms and in the logistics of moving kids around town, especially families with multiple kids. This has been a concern for a long time. The whole basic idea of using the Westlands for full day K. How do you decide? And how do you explain to parents, well, one kid's going to be on one bus and another kid's going to be at a different bus? That's a challenge, and that's going to be something that we're really going to have to work at. And we probably won't please everybody if that's where it comes out. So, yeah, if we can find a way to put everybody together. But I don't want these kids, I don't want our kindergartners playing on an asphalt parking lot either, right? I mean, they need time outside. We can't lock them in a gym 180 days a year. It does come back to, can we find the right place or not?
I'm only
You
laughing.
can build playgrounds. You can. I apologize for what it's going to sound like. I built playgrounds for preschools on asphalt. We bring in the imitation wood chips. You bring in, all the slides and all the other applications that involve in the place. So it's not like you need real trees. It's not like you need real grass. But there are, and this is K and pre-K, or at least K. So it can be done, on a temporary basis. I'm just curious of how much it helps the elementary schools if we were to go to those principals and say, really, what does 2 classrooms do for you? Is it as much as we think it is? I don't know. I know you have a better handle on it than I do, Michael.
No, the principals have a better handle on it. They're the people to ask. I think if we talk about what the path forward is here, part of it is looking at the space in town and to see if there's anything that's realistic or not. That I'm hearing very clearly that's the first hurdle you got to get over. If you want to lease space, you got to have a place to lease. So between now and August, yeah, I think we should investigate that. I think also in terms of giving feedback, I agree that first option maybe looks a little less likely than the second 3, really.
Yeah.
And so I think maybe another thing that would be good to discuss is what would we do if we did do some kind of expansion at the Westlands. I assume you're asking for some kind of guidance on which of these proposals to test out a little bit further. So, I mean, do we want to look hard at that Westlands expansion? And do we need to give them instructions to look at what should happen at community ed? Or do we just kind of say we'll work that out ourselves? I mean, is there space at the high school?
Not without totally realigning their program right now. I mean, I think, what I do think would be helpful, at least, and please let me know if you feel otherwise, if there are options that we just don't think are worthy of exploring, we should probably just try to take those off the table
Option
tonight
3, I mean 4.
to really kind of narrow this down.
What's the matter with 4?
Just,
The one with the 12.
Emily, just
No,
one
no,
more
What's
question.
number
No,
4?
D.
D, sorry.
And he's saying D1. I think
D1,
I think D2 we probably ought to look at a little bit further.
Which one's D2? I'm sorry. Just quick.
D2 is the center school and 6 at Westlands.
So Emily, Jason, maybe this is a question. So if we went to 20K classrooms in one location, is the math right? It's close to 70,000 square feet you would need, or is it less, in your opinion?
It all depends on the assumptions. If you're trying to, get by, maybe it's in that ballpark. We would have to run those numbers back at the office to know for sure. What I can tell you on the upper limit is if you were to combine the pre-kindergarten and the kindergarten in a new facility, right, which would far and exceed what you're describing, it would be in the 90,000 square foot range
That's because you brought
for pre-K
For pre-K
and
and
kindergarten
K.
and all the kindergarten, right? In our early childhood scenarios, we developed that program. So it would be somewhere between that 40,000 square foot number and a 90,000 square foot number. And we could certainly take a pass at what it would take to add those extra 8 classrooms in a rental facility, but it would be bounded by those two numbers, I think.
And the assumptions that we would be looking back to the working group for is, what is it that you want to provide in those spaces? Is it a gym and a cafeteria now because you have those additional students? Is it a library space because you're looking for parity? Can you do without the library? What kinds of spaces are you looking for when we're talking about this? Or, did you find a space that was 70,000 square feet and we have to fit everything into that? I mean, that's the other option too, is that working backwards from
Yeah,
there.
that
I mean, we
might,
got to see what's out there,
Right.
honestly, before we can even start making decisions.
Right. And we can't tell you a cost until we know what kind of spaces
Right.
you're looking at.
Jay, you've been through this process before. It's got to be a process to find space. I don't know what it
Well,
is.
yeah, I mean, the formal acquisition is a lengthy process. That can't happen. But I think what we can do is very informally, over the next 2 to 3 weeks, is just reach out to the local tenants who we know have space and just even see if anything is viable.
Okay.
I think, I think we can either rule in or rule out by the time we get together in August.
Yeah.
As if there's even something possibly out there. Then I think we have to have a real discussion about, if we do go the modular route, how many and where, and
Yeah.
then kind of see which of these scenarios we kind of back into.
So
I
you
mean-
want a decision by next month, though? I think.
Well, I think by August, we really need to kind of firm
Right.
up where we are, because then we need to give them the go-ahead to finalize our overarching plan that this is a piece of, because we want them to then come back in September and finalize the plan, so that we can then be
Okay.
prepared to go to town meeting in October. So I think if we kind of be thinking about this, that if we went the modular route, where do we think they could possibly go that would be most kind of beneficial and have least long-term impacts? And over the next couple of weeks, just look and see, leasing-wise, what's even out there. And if it's even viable to continue exploring or not, or, would it be the scenario with only the 12 rooms or the 20? That we can probably rule in or out pretty quick. And that then might help actually kind of limit our decisions. That we can do.
I agree with you. I think we should rule out, let's filter all this down to a couple of options. But Gary, I apologize. Gary, this is what you do every single day. Are we going down the right path, Gary?
Gary, why don't you come up? Your seat's over
What do you
here.
think?
Like anything else you do, it's hard. First of all, anything you rent or you lease, you can't bond. So first, all of that cost is on us, and you're not gonna get anything for that no matter what you do. Then you have to take whatever you do for that, whatever that number is, and doing this 17 years in this town and going in front of this town for all these capital projects and renovations that we've done, the 2 town halls, fire station, police station, 31 million for the school project. You have to give them a balance of how you sell both. How do you sell your temporary and how do you sell your permanent? How do you get it out there? That's key. The second part of it is simply, with MSBA, you have to get invited in. It's an 18-month process, and if you're not invited in during that time, you're going to another 18 months. So it could be 36. Jason and I attended their last class, MSBA, and we spoke to people that were there, and there were people that were both there for the first time accepted under the first phase, or people that were there because they weren't accepted in the first phase. MSBA tells you how you need to rewrite things or what you're doing wrong that doesn't let you in, and you correct those and you come back. So your leasing option becomes a little harder at that point, because if you're going out an extra 18 months to 36, you have to deal with that. Modular classrooms, again, a modular classroom, the reason why it's listed as a modular classroom is a modular classroom on average is a 20 to 25-year life. A building brick and mortar is minimum 50 and above, depending on how it's taken care of and what it is. So that's why they list it that way. If you add modular classrooms, there's all different ways to do it. You can add them like they've been added presently to the schools, which is sort of in that modular way where they're sitting on pillars. They're wrapped with skirts at the bottom, and eventually you're expecting them to go away. Or you could do a modular, which is this addition that you're sitting in right now, that's sitting on a foundation with a crawl space underneath it, which makes it the more permanent way of doing it. And then if you're looking at space, and you're looking at space at both elementary schools and some potentials for that, as well as your K and pre-K, and then a building project, if you were to have some on a particular elementary school, is it good space later on? You know, where you're saying that, you know, even if you gave back the 2 rooms now in each school, that's a help to a school. So I agree with the fact that I think you have to vet out more than one option. One that probably does do modulars, and one that does do your lease space, for sure. And then I think based on that, you have to take that with what you're going to move forward with, and you have to present the whole
Which program do
plan.
you like the best, Gary?
Which one do I like the
modular
best?
one. Do you like the last one that they showed with the school, with the Westland
Well,
Center School? Was it
yeah, I
4
think
modules at centers?
your first issue is if you can find a solution that does not touch community ed, then you're not adding a third cost, which we haven't really talked about. If you take one of those that
Yeah, but
moves community ed out,
No, their last option, I apologize.
Right.
Their last option is they relocate community ed into modules.
Yes.
at
Oh, yes.
Westland. Is that
Yes.
what you're talking about too?
Yes.
Is that a problem?
no. It's not a problem, because now you're really, what I'm saying is you're not adding that to your dilemma as well, and where am I gonna put them, and what's that cost gonna be? No, I would, if you're gonna look at an option, I would look at an option that leaves
Community
them
ed.
somewhere, and if you get to pick up those 8 rooms within the building of Westlands, that's huge.
So you like their last option, which is, I apologize, it's D2?
Yes. And, yeah, that's a very good option.
And that was 5 and change?
5.5.
Why is that more with it's just an additional 6 mods, right?
No.
No.
At the
it's
You're
Westlands?
still
a
doing,
total of 10 modulars. Because you have,
still doing center.
you have the 4
Well, I'm
center.
sorry, yeah, 6 at the Westlands though,
Correct.
but but that's, yeah, you said 5.5, and for B2, which is also 6 mods at the Westlands, you had 4 million.
The difference
That's-
between 4 modulars and 10 modulars.
Because in
No,
B2,
in
it's,
B2,
Oh,
you
you're
were still
adding-
adding 4 modulars to center, and
those are
then,
2 different options, though. You either would be adding modulars to Center or Westlands
To your
in
point,
option B.
You had a modular. There it is.
you're only talking
B2 is
about
2.9.
for the 4 modulars, 4.0 for the 6, right?
B2B is 2.9, and and the center school one, which is B1, is 2.6.
No,
He's
no.
asking about the 6 modular solution at Westlands for the extra 2.
Yeah, 4 million. But that
Oh.
doesn't that include,
You know
oh,
what?
that doesn't include the 4 at, so how do you
I'm
get,
sorry.
so how do you get
So,
enough space?
You know what, I'm sorry, there is a,
In Center School.
an-
Is it- what
there's
is
an error there. Because when I looked at this one, I said it's B1 and B2B, which was 4 at Westlands and 4 at Center.
it? Spend more money in the school.
So
Westlands and 4 at center.
8 total?
this was 8 total. Okay, so this is B1 and B2B.
6.6.
And you are correct. See, if you look at the difference, B2B is 2.9, and 2D, which is the 6 modulars, is 4.0.
But it's just the 6 at the Westlands,
So
you're
it's
not
6
adding
at the
another 4 at
Westlands
center
plus-
as well?
plus the 2.6 at center. So it's 6.6.
6.6, yeah.
So it'd be a total of 6.6.
6.6, not 5.5. So
But
before
why
we
is,
distribute
so
this, I
wait,
will
why
change-
is that number different then?
It's 6.6, not 5.5.
So the,
Both
This option
D2 should be
It
6.6.
should be 6.6, yes,
not 5.5.
correct,
Can you go to the summary slide there?
yes.
So
So we like,
Okay.
I think what you're asking about, Mike, is in the B scenarios, we only had 4 options when we were talking about
Right.
just getting to the 20. We had 6 modulars when we were adding the 2
Right.
extra ones for the pre-K program.
Mm-hmm.
So that, right, that was a total option of 6 modulars. In option D2, we have actually 10
Yeah.
modulars as part of the option, because now we're accommodating community ed as well. So the difference in cost is strictly arithmetic of the difference in modulars in those 2 scenarios.
We should just fix that right now while
Yeah,
we're thinking about it.
I was gonna, can I just hit
Okay.
escape and do
Let's
that?
just do it right now.
So D2 is 6.6 million.
Yes,
So it's
Which-
really a B1 plus B2.
So
That's
we
correct.
need to
Essentially.
have a
Which is
modular.
what that last
And
slide
that,
says.
and-
Right.
right, right,
That's right.
I think we can do both,
Superintendent
right?
lanes.
And it
So let's just
solves,
pick a
and it
modular
solves
deal.
the community ed problem.
And
So I
start
think
dialing.
if we're gonna do a modular, I think it's probably D2, it's probably the best. Anything, that first one is out. We should put a big red line through option A.
but no, I wanna fix the other one.
Oh,
Is that what we're looking to do tonight, Jim?
Yeah, if we're gonna put modulars somewhere, I like the idea of putting them at the Westlands.
Yeah, I do too.
Because I like the
Yeah.
covered access. You can, again, you don't necessarily have to put kindergartners out
And
there.
you're okay with the 4 at center?
Again, I think that's the other obvious place to put some,
Right.
since you can connect it to the building.
Yep.
And then, as Gary points out, you're talking more about a space like this, right? And you don't, you do have a longer expected lifetime with them.
And the 4 modulars at center do not increase any of the expenses as opposed to this super school that we talked a little earlier about. We can handle 4 more modulars at center without increasing cafeterias,
Still a small
libraries.
cafeteria.
Right, there are still limitations. Like I said, the existing cafeteria is undersized based on the MSBA guidelines for its current population, and adding, 100 kids to that would stress that a little more, but not to the point of adding, 216 extra
Yeah.
kids to that facility.
Yeah.
But again, it's part of a long-term project.
Yeah, so
So that's
Well,
temporary.
and again, you don't necessarily have to make it 4 kindergarten classrooms there.
Right.
Yeah, we'd
Right,
have
you
to-
could
we'd
add-
have to look
you
at-
could
I
try
wasn't
to-
thinking that, but we'd have to look at that.
Yeah.
so
So
if
can
we
you
were
go to
going to
the
narrow
list?
this down,
So we can knock off A connected, right? A
Yeah.
Well,
disconnected?
yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, the way I
You
kind of looked
connected,
at
I
this,
think, for
if this
sure.
is the short-term solution, none of the connected options work. They're just, they're financially unfeasible. So we're looking at unconnected options on the modulars, and we need to even explore whether lease space is viable or not. Because if we either rule lease space in or rule it out, if we rule it out, then it's very clear we're looking at a modular option. And I think, it is, the luxury of adding modulars to center because of the building issues and having it be attached is nice. And I think, adding them to Westlands is also,
So option B center.
very,
option
it's
D2.
very workable because it
Option
keeps
C.
a large number of the K kids together over in that one facility.
so option A is out, option B,
Option A connected is out, option A disconnected is in, right? Even if it's probably not the most viable. No.
option B, Westland Schools Connected is out.
Option B center school's in, sorry, that's what I mean.
I meant option B, Westland School Connected is out.
Option B Westland disconnected is in.
But I really do think that should be 6 instead of 4.
Okay. Well, then we
Okay.
just look at the cost, yeah.
I mean, we can look again at the NASDAQ projections, but they were just, that was not a good
It's
number
better
to
safe
me.
than sorry, so then you just say 6. It's still a reasonable cost on the list.
Yeah, it should, on the list, and then D2, which includes a solution for community ed.
And then C is the
I
leasing
think,
space.
yeah, we should look at C for sure, but I think, to make B a viable choice, we'd also have to simultaneously come up with a solution for the community ed space.
I don't think we should be talking about anything that hurts community ed. I think we should be looking to,
Yeah, it's not, no, we can't do
can't
without
displace
it.
them and say,
Right. Right,
figure it
so
out.
we have to, I mean, and that may be the test for option B. If we have no realistic options, then we have to build the additional modulars to give them some place to go.
which they do in D2.
Yes, that's right.
So why wouldn't we filter this all the way down right now for 6.5 million, 6.6? You're at D2, connected.
Yeah, half
Semi-connected.
and
Well,
half.
connected at Center and disconnected at Westlands.
Although Westland has a little bit more leeway, didn't Westland's,
That's where you can have the covered walkway.
we can have the
essentially.
covered walkway.
All right.
Yeah. I think the big thing tonight, I mean, it's helpful to me if we know we're walking away with looking at modular disconnected options, with the exception for the Center, they could be connected. That we don't want to explore the other options with the disconnected all over the place. And we need to rule in and rule out lease possibilities. And then that's
Well,
gonna,
I don't know. If we're at 6.6 for D2, then it's another 1.3 to have every kid at their home school. And I think I'd like to wait on saying yes or no to that.
come back at me
Right?
one more
So
time.
option A, disconnected, is 7.9, right? So that's a little bit more than
Oh, yeah.
D2, but it's not that much more. And you have every kid at their home school.
I don't think,
So,
Mike, did you see some of their?
yeah, they're problematic, but
Yeah.
but there's a really big incentive to keep the kids at their own school, I think.
I don't know.
I'm not sure.
It makes
when
busing
you-
a lot easier.
I'm not sure when you start to vet out each space that that's gonna stay at that number,
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay.
because of how some of those locations.
But if we're
are, how
asking
some of
about
those
what-
Bus routes might have to
Sure.
run.
Lots, playgrounds.
Well, but I think we need to look at, between now and August, we also need to talk to the bus company. We need to find out what it's gonna take to have separate routes through the same neighborhoods.
Right.
To take kids to two different schools versus taking them all to the same school.
Yeah, there is
Again,
cost in that, yeah.
option A is more expensive right now than option D2, and there are obvious places where that cost could go up as well. But I think if we're just kind of using a net here to see what gets through and what doesn't, I'd like to see that one go through at this point. I don't know that it'll be the final choice, but
Well, if we just say we're gonna rule in the disconnected options and rule in and rule out the lease over the next couple of weeks, if it's even viable.
Yeah.
I think that's fine for tonight.
Good. Okay.
well, even B with the disconnected Westlands. Yeah, I mean, what's your sense on, are we gonna find a solution for ComEd or not? Because if we're not gonna find a solution for it,
I think.
then let's just pitch it now and go straight to D2.
Yes. Because that's another problem we're going to have to solve. And we're trying to make this as simple as possible.
I mean, sometimes the solution is right there. We're not,
No, I-
what is the solution by not disrupting community ed? You have to solve that, so D2 solves that.
Right.
So,
C and D2 are the best two, I think, on the list, honestly.
Well, educationally, I know it costs more. A2 really, and I know there's gonna be some site issues, but A disconnected is actually the best.
Educationally, but we also got to talk about feasibility. So what's actually going to happen?
I just
Like you
think
said, you
Gary's
go out and
right.
look at these sites. You go look at Byam, and where you going to put those trailers? That's where my daughter goes to school, and they're all
Going to be difficult, yeah.
yeah, it's going to be really hard, and that number could become $10 million. You don't really know.
No, but again, another one of my concerns is I do want this to be a short-term plan,
Right.
but if this becomes a medium or longer-term plan,
But then you got to
you
do
know,
it.
it's much better having those kids in their neighborhood schools.
All right.
Or their community schools. I just
Again, I
hate to
think-
rule it out.
So we have three
without-
options then. We have A disconnected,
further.
C, and D2. And I mean, that's real, and we should pitch everything else. And lease is easy. We can figure out in the next 30 days if it's even going to be feasible or not. And then we're down to two options that eventually we vote on. And it's good.
I just think we need the square footage sooner rather than later,
Okay.
please.
You want to do that, or do you want to back in? Because I think it might be just as fast to try to back in If we ask around and see, look, talk to the realtors, say, what do you have between like 60 and 90,000 square feet? And then, you know, if they,
I don't disagree with you, but I think
We can do both.
I think you could
We
do
can
that
give
very
you,
quickly.
we can give you our number, and then you can go out there and
Okay. All right, good.
and look back in.
So that's it, 3 options. So A disconnected, C and D 2. All right.
And lease.
Well, right, C,
Well,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
C.
yeah.
Okay.
We love options in the Chelmsford School District.
Hey, Brad, I just want to take this opportunity to thank you and your entire team,
Just who's going to do it?
Emily and Jason
I'll be on
and Michelle. You know, you put up with a lot of our stuff, and I apologize, but I think you guys did an unbelievable job, and I look forward to working with you guys in the future. Thanks for having so much patience.
It's our pleasure, really. Thank you.
You have to stay for the whole meeting, though. Just so you
It's a cruel and unusual punishment. You can't do that.
Cruel and
Do you want,
unusual
wait a minute,
punishment.
does he want us to say this to his contract?
but we do?
I've already saved it to the list.
I think that's good. Three options. is good.
Maybe we
I
could
saved
go
it
through the
onto
rest
here
of it in
for
about
the
7
June.
minutes.
Why don't you just email it to me, so that I just have a clean one? And I can
Yeah.
go with that?
Okay, it's been updated, so.
think that's a
But do you want it just with those 3 options that we talked
Take all the
about?
big off.
The whole presentation, so that that can be public, but just email
I'll
me
come
the
see it
one
on Monday. Did you
document,
decorate
so
yet?
I don't get confused with what I had.
Okay.
Just educational.
Tomorrow's fine.
I notice there's a lot of, like, what are the terms? Are these from, like,
Okay.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
guys very
school
much.
activity?
Thank you.
Is that what most of those are?
Appreciate it. This is the fun part.
Yeah.
Al, before we leave this topic,
Yes.
I think once we have a chance to make this presentation public, I think we should schedule a public input session.
I agree.
Agreed. Absolutely agreed.
I mean, I know it's a summer, but I think
Oh,
it's
Zootopia.
time to get the community
guys.
involved.
Would you want to do that before the August meeting?
Absolutely.
Yes, 100%.
You know what? Again,
Thank you,
there'll be
guys.
people who can't make it, and
Bye.
that's,
Bye, Emily.
you know,
Yeah, but
Thank
with
you.
the media.
Thanks, guys.
It'll
Yep.
get,
Sure you don't wanna
it'll
stay.
get spread out pretty well.
Thank you for your input.
Want me to send an email around tomorrow and kind of poll for some dates?
Yeah.
Maybe the first week in August or something, or, I don't know.
is that enough time? Would you rather have a little bit more time to?
Are you just trying to get feedback on the
I'm
overarching?
just, right, well, you know what? John may not be the only one with an opinion about where the modulars should be at Byham. And I think if the sooner we know if there are some big flaws or some big concerns, I should say, in some of these ideas, the better. That, I think, though, has to be balanced against, I think there'll be a lot of questions about the leasing option. And so the more information we can have about that, maybe that'll facilitate discussion as well.
The parking situation at Byham is atrocious. Like when it gets filled up.
Yeah, I mean, all of that's gonna have to get talked about, and I think it'd be a mistake for,
Makes you feel better.
5 or 6 of us to try to make a decision here without listening.
Right.
I have an opinion about everything. So,
I hadn't noticed.
Next week's probably
I
too.
think that's
For
why
the
you got,
record.
that's why you got the job.
that's why I
We
got
meet
the
the second.
No, we're off the second.
I got changed, okay. These are
Well,
when I
we're only
first
gonna meet
scheduled it.
Yeah, we're only gonna meet
You're falling behind.
All right.
us.
And we
yeah.
get bargaining, it's
Behind.
anything in the 4th, so the week's
You're away the
open
second.
pretty
Oh,
much.
we
Yeah.
should go right through
But
2,
that
3,
doesn't
4
mean
right
you
now.
can't do
Yeah,
it.
these should be bang, bang,
Yeah.
bang. We have executive today, too.
Do we?
You want to keep the meeting on the second?
Should be quick, though.
There's no clock in here anymore.
It's okay with me.
That's right.
It's okay with me. How about the second?
Yeah, we were just conferring on dates, and we weren't going to meet the first Tuesday in August. We were only going to meet the 3rd. But if people are available the Tuesday, August 2nd, we could just post that as a public comment meeting.
The only thing that's not showing there is that's the date that they want to change the economic development meeting to.
Oh, yeah.
They want to change it from the 27th to
I thought you
the,
said the 3rd.
Yeah, that's the 3rd.
to the 3rd. Okay, yeah. That's,
Are we
yeah,
going
there
to
would
that?
just be those 2 nights, that's all right.
My wife assumes I
Public and
have
it's open,
school committee every
and it's
Tuesday.
gonna be here.
So I'm good on
I
any
think I'm
Tuesday.
gonna,
It hasn't been
I
confirmed
was
yet. I don't
invited to
think.
that. I think I'm gonna be there, so.
We're on TV, she's watching. Not the Brick House. I'm not at the Brick House every other Tuesday.
So the second, all right?
You want to do the second? Okay.
And Barbara should be back too, which will be good.
Yep. Okay.
She
I'll get
also
that,
sometimes has opinions.
I'll get that posted. When I get a
Occasionally.
copy of the presentation tomorrow morning, I'll get that posted to the website. And I'll also send out maybe a connected message to the parents, just so that they know.
I'll reach out. Is this for like public, for people?
Well, it'll just be a public forum, and people can come and
I'll reach out to the Chelmsford news site administrators so they can put something out too. That way it can get out to as many people as possible.
You know what I can do? I
I'm
can-
talking to the Margaret Smith tomorrow.
Okay. We can have them create like a Facebook post from us, and then you can push that out to the different groups if you'd like.
Okay, great. That'd be
Okay,
perfect.
we'll get on that in the morning.
That could be your first Facebook.
Yay.
Very exciting.
I still gotta write that policy.
Since we brought it up, will you people be able to attend on the 3rd?
You
Because I
people.
got to get, well, to the Economic Development meeting, because I got to get back to them,
I'll be there.
yeah?
I will let you know.
What time is it?
7 was the other one, so I assume it's the same.
At Town Hall.
Yeah,
Here.
but it didn't say.
No, it's gonna be
Oh, it's
here.
here,
It's here?
that's right.
We're just just watching or participating. I don't. Put me tentative, yes, but I will.
All right, yeah, just get back to me, because I'm supposed to get back to him.
Yes.
All right,
Okay. Can we continue?
yeah.
Okay. And I know that was a lengthy discussion and presentation, but it's
Necessary.
it's very necessary, it's timely, and we do want to bring the facility assessment into a close later on this summer. So I think Dora and Woody have been excellent to work with. We've had great representation among staff, and so I'm very happy with how that's wrapping up. The second item on the agenda this evening is fiscal year 2016 end-of-year budget transfers and adjustments. Joanna prepared a memo and packet for you that just take a look at our closing balances in our accounts and some suggested amendments and transfers that I'm going to walk you through. So basically, we're ending the year on a positive note. Fiscal 16 wrapped up very well. Long story short, we still have some encumbrances that we're closing out. So those are open purchase orders that invoices are still being processed on. And we expect those to be fully paid at the time the books close, or right into fiscal 17 after they roll over at the end of the year. But those encumbrances should be paid. We look like we are going to end the year with a potential balance of $344,000 in the account. So one of a couple of different adjusting entries that we're recommending to basically close that and bring that to zero. One is every year the school department and the committee does need to go and vote to transfer the sum of money that has not been collected from the food service revolving fund from different students who purchased meals but weren't able to pay for them. We're obligated to go in at the end of the year and actually make a transfer from the operating budget to the revolving fund to cover that deficit. So there is a more detailed report when we get to the food service fund, but the total uncollected revenues for this year are $13,693. So one of the recommended motions will be to move that funding from the local operating budget to the revolving fund. And that will be something that the auditors do look at when they come in to audit our books later in the fall. Because we do have a sufficient balance, the second transfer that we're recommending this evening is in March, we had made a journal entry and we had moved the expense of the former superintendent settlement costs to the school choice funds, but we actually do have sufficient funds within the local budget to pay for that. So basically, we're recommending a transfer to reverse that movement of funds. So basically, reverse the expense transfer, and that will, in essence, free up $114,000 in school choice funds that you will then be able to utilize in fiscal 17 or beyond. And you have great flexibility in how you utilize those funds, so that's why we're recommending that particular transfer. And the third transfer for the evening would basically be the balance, taking the balance in all the available accounts, which total $216,813, moving that to the out-of-district special ed tuition account. And basically, because we had booked payments against the circuit breaker account over the course of the year, doing an expense transfer and moving the expense from circuit breaker back to the local budget. And that'll zero out the account. And then we'll have a $216,000 starting balance in circuit breaker that can carry into 17. You can't carry local operating budget funds from one year to another, but revolving in circuit breaker you can. So basically, we've expended significant amounts of money in sped tuition, so we'll be able to make that reversal, and that'll give us a little bit of a cushion to start 17. So I would look for those three transfers, motions on those to kind of close our books for fiscal 16. There is a chance that as we do close encumbrances over the next couple of days and weeks, if something wasn't we had a purchase order open for $100, we only paid $90, there'd be $10 that would be free. A final entry would be to basically move, similar to this, all of those available little pockets of money to that special ed account and then do a final transfer to circuit breaker. That will happen before we meet again because the books have to close by the time we get together in August. So if there is any final adjusting entry, we'll make it and then I'll just report it out to you in August, but it won't be significant. It'll be just cleaning up any of those small accounts. But all in all, I'm very pleased with how the year ended. Local budget-wise, I think we're in a good financial position going into 17, and I'd recommend these transfers.
Just a quick question. The 344 that you started with, that's going to be there, this is all,
That basically zeroes it out.
okay, that's right.
Yeah,
Okay,
all those
make sure
add
I
up to
get
the
that.
344.
All right, good.
And gives you the flexibility of moving money back into circuit breaker, which you can carry and use for other things. If you don't do that, we can't carry it forward, am I correct?
Correct.
Okay,
I'd like to make a motion.
certainly.
I'd like to make a motion. I recommend the school committee approve the transfer request of $13,693 from the FY16 local operating budget balance to the food service revolving fund to provide the necessary funding to offset the total unpaid student food service program fees for 2015-2016 school year.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion?
I'd like to talk a little bit about that number. That's kind of a big number, bigger than I expected to see. I don't really have any historical context for it, though, so, I mean, is your sense that that's a big number for the district, for a district of our size?
I truly don't know. I haven't looked back at your prior year, whatever those amounts have been that have been cleaned up. It is surprising to me. I mean, when you look at there is a detailed report on the next memo, the financial one.
Right.
A lot of them are very small, kind of cleanup things, and I'm sure parents, will go in and make the entries. What surprised me is some of the ones that were like the multiple $100 ones.
There's 10 or 15 that
Yeah, they were pretty
that
substantial.
are, in the hundreds of dollars, not $100, but hundreds
600
of dollars range. Are we doing any follow-up with those families? I mean, it may be that that's a warning sign that they should be filling out a free and reduced application. Are we following up in that kind of way with them?
Yeah, we can ask Danielle, do you want to kind of take this out of order, because the food service report kind of ties into this? Is it all right to ask Danielle to come up, and we can talk about, come on up, Danielle. We can talk about
She's been
collection
itching to
efforts.
come up.
Well, that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I will say, even after we clear this up tonight, we do still try to recoup that fund.
Sure.
It's not that we wipe the slate clean and start over. There will be an effort ongoing to try to bring in that revenue. But would you mind just touching on the actual process you follow now?
Absolutely.
That'd be great.
So we didn't actually get the online payment system until mid-year this year. So communication with parents, to my knowledge, prior to my arrival, was poor and non-existent.
Right.
With the online system, I sent emails to parents twice a week and follow up with letters. When we get above $300, I reach out directly to the principal because they have relationships with the families, and in all of the circumstances, there are other situations, which the principals are very well aware of. So Joanna and I actually went over the figures. I can't say what it was in times past. I can't find that data. But it's between 1% and 2% of what our sales are. So percentage-wise, it's not actually a very high number.
Right.
And I can say that communication, as it develops, it's certainly going to affect that. So
Okay.
So we're
Yeah.
moving in the right direction.
Yeah, I think the concern is less that we should be chasing people down the street, and more that if people have circumstances, then, you know, this is another way of getting that view of it. And if there's something that can be done, then we should.
Absolutely. And so when I send out email alerts, that's part of the conversation. It's always part of the conversation. Even in the letters, I say, you know, if you believe you may be able to receive this benefit, please do apply, and I'm here to help in any way that I can. And we do see an increase in, you
Yeah.
know,
Okay.
filling out a free and reduced application.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
So,
thank you.
you're welcome. I don't know if I should stay here or
You can stay there.
We'll get through the
there
votes
may
again.
be other questions. I don't know.
By the way, I'm going to make the superintendent promise next time you're going to go first. We're going to start with you. And
That was
then-
very interesting.
It's good stuff. I'd like to recommend,
The only thing.
Yeah, we've got the motions on the table.
You do want to roll?
It does need to be a roll call.
okay,
You want to score on the room?
Aye.
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 Okay. Yes.
Item number 2.
Yep.
I'd like to recommend the school committee approve the request to reverse the previously approved expense transfer of $114,461 from the local budget to the school choice revolving fund to provide for the costs associated with former Superintendent Tiano's settlement.
Second.
Any discussion?
So you were reversing it to the 1210 line, the superintendent line? Okay.
Just for historical
No,
knowledge.
Legal
The
settlement.
legal settlement account, because that's
Okay.
where we have the other two administrator
Okay.
accounts. I want to isolate them.
Yeah,
So
uh-huh.
that they're together.
Okay, that's fine.
Just for my knowledge, what is the Tiano settlement account? What is it?
It's not, there was costs related to the former superintendent when he.
We bought out the last year of his contract,
Got it.
essentially.
Okay.
And so basically, when we knew what those costs were going to be, we'd pay them out. Mid-year, we decided to transfer that money to the, because we hadn't budgeted it. We decided to transfer that money to the school choice fund.
Got it.
But now we have excess within our local budget, and we can't carry it over. We're going to reverse that transfer. So we're basically going to move the expense back to the local budget.
Okay.
But we're going to book it in the legal settlement account, not the superintendent's salary account. That way, the three will be isolated for future reports.
Right.
And that's going to then free up the $100,000 in the school choice fund, which you will carry over to 17, and you have much greater flexibility with.
And
Let me just,
Yeah.
well, this line item won't exist next year. I assume this is the last year.
The settlement?
Yeah.
Yeah, the problem is it didn't exist this year. So we were kind of behind the eight ball trying to fund it, because it hadn't been budgeted.
Okay,
So
all right.
we're basically, it's now going to be clean. There won't be any settlement next year.
Got it.
And so the budget the line doesn't exist.
Got it.
That's why I want to isolate it to the settlement account, because we do have a settlement line item. But I didn't want to have the superintendent's salary spike one year and then not wonder why.
Right.
So
That's
now we'll
right.
at least be able to look back and find out why.
Okay, great. Thank you.
so what's the final total for the carry forward on the school choice? You probably have it in those tiny little numbers.
It'll be the 216 plus the 114, I assume.
She was just asking about the school
Bifocal
choice.
link.
No, if we had additional money in school choice.
Do you like look over them?
For this year, it'll bring us back up to 425,000.
Great.
And then we had a carryover from last year of 210.
All right.
Wow.
What a difference a year makes, huh?
It's in good shape.
That's in good shape.
It's great stuff. All right,
Full day K, here we come.
here we go.
Okay.
We got a
Michael?
vote.
Aye.
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 Okay.
Item number 3, I recommend that the school committee approve the transfer request of $216,813 from the FY16 local operating budget account balance to the local budget out-of-district special education tuition account. Further, to approve an expense transfer in the amount of $216,813 from the local budget out-of-district special education tuition account to the circuit breaker account.
Second.
Discussion?
Just with the final carryover then in circuit breaker.
We're actually in a little bit of a deficit at the moment. So with this, it'll bring it by about 150,000.
as a little starting point.
Because right now, we're 84.
Does that include the fourth quarter payment?
Yes, it does.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, we had to fully utilize the fourth quarter
Yeah,
payment.
uh-huh.
So it's positive 150 after the transfer?
Correct.
Got it,
Yeah.
okay.
As a starting point.
Okay.
Right.
FY '17.
That's right.
All right.
Thank you. Nice job, Joanna.
Thank you.
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Okay, so we'll book those transfers and then close up fiscal 16. If there is any minor activity to kind of close 16 between meetings, we'll just report that out in August and begin receiving regular reports on fiscal 17 finances as we get going. So I thank you for that. Third item of the evening is some follow-up to the food service program and the meal price adjustment discussion. I'm going to cover a couple things and then ask Danielle to review a few. One of the items that came up at our last meeting, we had talked about the food service kind of audit or report that was done. And I know Mike had actually asked for Ray a copy of it. We actually had, just to clarify, we haven't received the actual written copy of the report yet. They'd only done the verbal report out. So as soon as we do receive the report, we'll email it out to you, but we don't have it. It's not that we're not giving it to you, we don't have it yet. So as soon as the report does come in, we'll get that out to you. I know Danielle was asked for some participation rates, so that's included, and she can touch on that. When we discussed also, we started talking about those meal price adjustments, and there were a couple of different scenarios. So there is a worksheet in here that basically talks about what the financial impact on those scenarios was. It's about 3 pages in, and if you look at the price proposal number 1, would basically generate about $39,000 of additional revenue. Price option 2 generates about $49,000 worth of revenue. And we had talked about that option of actually increasing the lunch prices at the high school and the middle schools to the 3 1/4. That would generate about $67,000 of additional revenue. One of the concerns I believe Danielle and some of the food service people have about jumping to that 325 is just the kind of the dramatic increase over where it is now, and that could potentially hurt, food sales. We had also talked about that, possibly having the 2 different rates, the minimum rate that everyone pays, and then possibly a slightly higher lunch cost at the high school. What we need to actually, as a board, you need to vote to set that minimum number. So I think that's what's important to do tonight. Certainly, we can continue to have a discussion about possibly having that alternate rate for a higher lunch. That's one I have to really give a lot more thought to be honest with you, before I could recommend that. I know you could implement it without a recommendation, but one of the things we really do kind of strive for within the schools is to take away any of the stigma from the free lunch program and kids going through the lines and being able to very discreetly, if they qualify for free and reduced lunch, get the same lunch everyone else has. And I wouldn't want to see that stigma if, some kids were receiving the tier 1 lunch and some were receiving the tier 2. So that's one I'm not familiar with. I have no experience with as far as implementing because of some of those stigma type issues. I'd want to just do a little more research on that before really kind of bringing a recommendation forward. And for the purposes of setting the rates for the lunch program, we really need to establish that tier 1 rate so that we can start the rolling out the information to parents and collecting the forms and pushing that. So our hope would be tonight to be able to set that rate. But if you don't mind, I'll turn it over to Danielle and ask her to review those few attachments. The first would be the participation rates with the committee, and then perhaps we can talk about that option 2, which we're recommending at this point, and go from there.
Okay, so since we had some discussion about it, I just figured I would supply you the spreadsheet that I utilize to calculate these rates for me. This is actually, this is my spreadsheet, but it literally gets plugged into the state website exactly as it appears, with the enrollment figures and the daily attendance and the operating days, so that it's calculating real data. And if you look, these are the numbers that I reported to you at our last meeting, so I just figured I'd provide an example. Next was our different options. So at our last discussion, we talked about the potential of moving to a 325 rate at the high school versus the 310 that I originally suggested. And I reached out to my peers. It's kind of sporadic response because it's the summertime, although those that were around did respond. The if you look at the surrounding area, those that are actually charging $3.25 at the high school are Burlington and Groton Dunstable, but their increases were a little bit more incremental than ours. And so I reached out to my peers and I said, well, what's your response? You know, what's your decrease in participation when you increase, you know, and they had only, the highest increase that they had experienced was 25 cents. And they said that participation rates tend to drop between 10 and 15%. They do, you know, level off over time, but I guess my concern is that with the 40-cent increase, my concern would be reduced participation versus having our numbers in line with what I think just would be optimal for our community. So, but we have the comparison there, so we can definitely explore that. I ran those numbers to see what the differences would be in increase in revenue. But my bids are already done for next year, so I don't have much of an option in going back and saying, okay, I'd like this item over that item per se. But for the following year, obviously, that would, you know, be part of the discussion. And Joanna and I were talking about just the different options, and I'd really like to see the additional revenue pointed more towards equipment needs, because ultimately, long-term, that really changes our options. Right now, we're limited, not necessarily, I have already bid a higher scale item on all counts, but without a steamer and without those pieces in place, we're just limiting ourselves. So we also had that discussion as well. So I don't know if there are questions regarding that.
What was option B generating in?
An extra 49,000.
So you want to take the, approximately,
Yeah.
some portion of the 49,000, invest it back in equipment.
Yes. When we originally scouted out, you know, moving away from preferred meals, you know, at a minimum, 3 ovens provided to the elementary schools would run us about $42,000. That's for some basic, you know, equipment. Now, you know, we're ending in the positive this year, obviously, but more and more, you know, if we were to put those equipment pieces in place, you know, just to move off preferred, you know, add an additional steamer, start to move not just in a reactive way, but in a proactive way, and build and develop our equipment so that, you know, we're not paying a ton of money to repair equipment that's dated, however, you know, and replace it with new things in an economical way, and a very, looking at the whole capital expenditure plan of our operations to say, okay, well, this, you know, warmer unit is, you know, 12 years old, and you know, we're expecting it to live this long. Having that plan in place long-term and having the revenue go towards those goals, as well as increasing labor, and, you know, I just think it'll have a greater impact on the quality of our meals.
I agree with everything you said, as long as we continue to increase the quality of the food every step of the way. Sometimes you can make a big investment in machinery, but that doesn't always correlate to quality. Unless you're buying the best, you
Right.
can't cook the best.
Yeah.
So all I'd like you to do is to realize how important it is, as you move away from preferred, to increase the quality of the food that you start with. That's a big
Absolutely.
deal.
Absolutely. I've already done that moving forward for next year, and you're going to see that all the way.
I've seen equipment, and respectfully speaking, I'm in 20% of the schools in the state of Massachusetts. I've seen brand-new equipment stay there and get used very little, because they think we need a new slicer, we need a new steamer. But unless they know how to use it, unless they're buying the
Absolutely.
best product in order to cook, then sometimes it's a waste. So just please keep that in mind. Only the best is a bargain when it comes to the quality of food.
Absolutely.
Please, thank you.
Absolutely.
Just to add to that, I think the other thing is, we'll certainly try to utilize some of this additional revenue this year and then in future years also for some of the capital equipment that we need. But we are going to need to actually, in the regular capital budget, include some additional costs, because we can't wait for the food service program to just fully be able to purchase some of this equipment to get us up to speed. In the capital planning that goes on through the fall and kind of finalizes around December, we're going to need to include a figure for some equipment in that. So that will be ongoing also. Because if we waited for the program itself to generate enough funds,
I'd much
it would take
rather,
too long.
Mr. Superintendent, I'd much rather see it in that direction than ask the school lunch program to pay for their capital
Right.
expenses, because they're not going to be able to, they'll piecemeal it. I'd much rather see them put it in the quality of the food, us make it an investment on our end, as opposed to asking you to foot that bill, because you'll never catch up. Would that be
Right.
accurate?
Yeah, that's what I'm concerned about.
Excellent. I love that idea.
Good.
Do we need a roll call on this?
Could, would there be any chance of getting like the last 3 or 4 years' worth of those state reports?
I can definitely tell you all of the reports that I have put in for this year. Years prior, once they're fed in electronically, I don't know that necessarily former directors, it's
We
reported
can't-
to the
we
state.
can't-
It's
Right,
reported
we
to the
can't,
state.
we can't pull it down from the state?
The audit report?
Well, so this reimbursement chart with the number of meals and the, right? I mean, you're saying you're providing this to the state.
Oh, you want to look at the percentages
Yeah,
over time?
presumably they're archiving it somewhere.
Yeah, I thought you meant the copy of the audit report that was coming from DOE.
No. Looking at the trend lines.
Yeah, I think we should be able to, even if we don't have it readily available, we could go
Again,
to the DOE
right,
and get it.
it's not a rush, but yeah, if we
Right.
just file a request and look at, 4, maybe 5 years, no more, I think that's plenty.
Yep.
But I'd love to see how things have trended. There's been enough changes
Sure.
in that time period that it might be interesting to see how things actually went. The other thing about looking at that is it looks like we are not anywhere near serving all of the free and reduced lunches that the kids are eligible for.
No, we're not. We're not. We
How-
aren't. Breakfast at the high school is minimal. It's very quiet, and no, we're not capitalizing on.
But I mean, even the lunches, right? I mean, just looking, maybe I'm doing this wrong. So you've got 20 operating days for the high school, 41 kids who are eligible for a reduced lunch, right? So that's 800 possible reduced lunches we could be serving, and we're only serving 335. The proportions are roughly similar for the free lunches. Why aren't these kids getting the food? Why
Well-
aren't they taking it? Or is there some other thing that I'm not understanding?
Not all kids that are eligible to receive the benefit of free or reduced lunch actually take advantage of it. In the state of Massachusetts, in my original, I shared some data, just general data. In the state of Massachusetts, actually, it's one of the lower participation rates for free and reduced. And it's in the 70%. I can't say exactly how many on average, but it takes everyone into account of those statistics. So you'll have places that socioeconomically
Right, yeah, we're
will
not at
be-
70%.
Right. Now, in a community with very high free and reduced rates, you can move into community eligibility provision, which basically provides for the whole community. So the data's it's a little skewed high in those areas. But that being said, you're right, we're not getting the free and reduced kids aren't taking full advantage of the benefit that they have.
Are they not taking advantage of it? Food is marketing, right? If you want to sell food, you got to market it. Do we market the opportunities that we have, that you provide for the kids, whether it's posters, whether, our teachers are explaining to the kids, you can go in the cafeteria and have breakfast. Maybe we could market this a little bit better?
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I rolled out Facebook this year, and that's why I'm trying to work on, working one-on-one with the kids to try to get that message out. I'm not actually allowed to market free or reduced because I'm soliciting. If teachers suggest to a student that they should be taking advantage of it, then they can, but I'm not actually allowed to say that in my role. But that being said, I want all kids to come and enjoy a meal, period. I always try to encourage everyone to take part in the meals program. Some do and some don't, and that is definitely something I'm working on. Long-term marketing is definitely a major piece that I'm not sure if it's been really, taken advantage of.
So people eat with their eyes. They
Absolutely.
see something that looks unbelievable, their mouth starts to salivate, they get hungry. Imagine around school, these wonderful posters of the food, your actual food, I'm not talking about stock pictures, your food that they can enjoy at breakfast, they can enjoy at lunch. That would remind the kids, you know what, that does look pretty good, let me go eat. McDonald's spends $1 million a day on advertising.
I know, I wish
to
I had that
convince you
budget.
that you're hungry. So maybe in the future, you could think about posters or some actual point of contact with the kids. I realize social media and the power of it, but these kids that are walking down the hallway, it would be nice to be reminded, whether it's in the classroom or in the hallway, hey, come on down and get a nutritious meal.
Absolutely.
I just think the teachers, if they got behind that also, I think it gives, I know it does, it gives these children, when you have the proper balanced meal, the right nutrition, it gives you the energy to participate in class. And I think if we could, bring all that stuff together.
I absolutely agree with you. In my former world, I had digital signage, and I basically would snapshots each and every day and post it up on the digital signage, and they can see pictures. Oh, this is what lunch is today. Send out pictures to the teachers and say, oh, this is what we're serving in the cafeteria today. Those pieces I wasn't able to integrate in year one, but I fully intend to. I need to get the tools and equipment ready so that we can roll those things out, but that's part of having that conversation. You're absolutely right.
And they'll inherently buy more product from you, whether they're extra milks, extra desserts, extra fruit, and you'll continue to increase your revenue as a result of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'd like to see an increase in participation rates overall, but I'm really concerned that these kids who can use it the most are not getting it for whatever reason, and that's, I'd like to see a real increase in their participation rate specifically.
Michael, if you think about it, there's only two reasons, right? They don't like the food, or they're not thinking, oh yeah, it's time to eat, because of,
Right.
they're on the go, they just had their third cup of coffee, and they're wired, so, or the quality of the food's not there, and they have that perception. But you're changing that, and through, to Michael's point, whether we stop marketing, but we bring more people aware of what we have down there, I think you'll see exactly what you're talking about, the participation increase. At least that's my opinion.
And I meant to get it piloted this year, but just meeting time with Steve Murray and trying to collaborate with students. We're starting cafeteria committee, which basically serves in that role. Basically, I sit with kids and I say, oh, look, these are all the options we're launching. What do you like? What don't you like? Why? What do you want to see? And we've done taste tests in the kitchen. We're rolling out smoothies and yogurt parfaits and all kinds of different options for next year that we've begun already. But I didn't have FaceTime with the kids in order to have that cafeteria committee. So this coming year during Flex Block, we're looking for students from each of the houses to represent the cafeteria committee for that very reason. Because it doesn't matter what I think, it matters what they think. What do they want to see? What do they want to see happening in their cafeteria? That's what we want to see happen.
Well, I know we have the greatest high school principal, in the state of Massachusetts, so I'm sure he's watching. So if you're watching, Principal Murray, please help us
Oh, I've been in his ear.
participate and encourage more.
Actually, he's been great. He's been
He's
fully
the best.
supportive. He's
the
absolutely
best.
awesome.
I think, yeah, that's fantastic. I love that you're doing that.
Yeah, that's incredible.
And I think once you get that solid there, I'd love to see it extended to the
Oh,
middle schools
absolutely.
and even to the elementary schools. I got a presentation from a group of students at Center a couple of years ago, complete with bar graphs on what they liked and what they didn't like.
Oh, yes.
They're ready to talk about it, so.
Absolutely. Well, the point is to launch it at the high school only because
Yep,
the
sure.
development's a little older, then move to the middle schools, and then move down to elementary schools. It's the natural, progression.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a recommendation. I'd like to make a motion and recommend that the school committee approve an increase of 25 cents to the 2016-2017 student lunch price as follows. Elementary school from $2.40 to $2.65. Middle and high school from $2.85 to $3.10. And all breakfasts will stay at the current price of $1.50, no change.
Second.
Motion made and second. Any further discussion? This also needs to be a roll call vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
unanimous.
Well, lovely, thank you. Now I
Thank
can
you.
Congratulations,
move
and
forward
thank
on
you
my
for your
paperwork.
Hard work.
Get the message
you.
out to parents in the community.
You go first next time, Tom.
Whenever you want to invite the school committee for lunch, we're available.
Awesome, we'll do that.
Great, thanks, Danielle.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Fourth item this evening, it was either the last or might have been two school committee meetings ago in June. The topic at the end of the meeting had come up about the Chelmsford residents and some of the new people that were residing there, and the impact in particular on the Byham Elementary School because of where its proximity is.
Betting it was Mike that brought it up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I know, I don't actually, I don't know how.
I'm just kidding,
I don't remember who it came up, but it was just a general discussion. So I did reach out to Evan Belansky, the Community Development Director, and Evan and Al Chair Thomas. I sat down with Paul Cohen to just kind of talk about what was happening at that current development, what was going to be happening over the number of years, because there is another small development that's going to be coming online relatively soon. But that actually, from what we learned, is a lot more kind of one-bedroom, two-bedroom type locations that shouldn't have a significant impact on the schools. But there's another development that's going to be, or another set of housing that's going to be coming online in 2019-ish that has like another 58 to 60 homes, or no homes, but apartments. And those are multi-bedroom apartments, 2 and 3 bedrooms. So they anticipate many more kids coming from that particular development a couple of years down the line. But they did, Evan actually followed up with David Hedison, who's the head of the Housing Authority, and he was able to provide some information on the actual school-age children that are in that current development right now. There's 35 kids that actually live there that are, I don't know for sure, but I assume are attending the Chelmsford Public Schools. There's a pretty good distribution on the age of the students and the grades. The highest age number of students was, there were 5 sixth graders, but everyone else, there were typically, 1, 2, 3, or 4 kids in a particular age. What that relates to at the school, if you have a 4-strand school and you have 4 kids coming through development, basically your class size is going up by 1 on average, just because of that. Byam certainly has received some additional enrollments, and a lot actually transpired over the course of the spring. They have some higher class sizes. We did make that adjustment in the budget to add an additional 4th grade classroom for next year. So for the 4th grade numbers actually look fine. But I thought this was very informative. Evan then forwarded us a copy of a financial impact analysis that had been done a few years back that talked about the 40B developments. So I was able to read through that and take a look at what the schools had provided at the time. So more so for just conversation purposes, wanted to kind of pass that on to the committee. Yeah, I don't know, Al, if you had anything you wanted to talk about.
I
but
thought it was a very good meeting. I mean, the real emphasis was that we need to be part of the discussion when there are things, one of the things that was interesting is I think there were 3 major places in town where there still could be further development, and for one reason or another, it hasn't taken place. One's in North Chelmsford, I don't remember the location, one's in the Bill Ricker line, I think.
Yeah.
And I don't remember the third one, but they didn't really offer any explanation why they haven't been developed. But it's really important if something breaks in those that we know, just like, we needed to know about these. So I think it was a very good meeting.
Yeah. I mean, from my perspective, the biggest thing that we can gain is just the knowledge of current and future developments, so that we can at least kind of bring it to the table and we can plan for it. I don't know if I really play a role, or I don't even know about this committee and actually like approving developments or whatever within the community. We just ask that, anytime things were being contemplated, that they tell us, so that we can plan, we can take a look at projections if we need to around enrollments. And, again, in my experience over this past year, the town has been very cooperative in keeping us up to speed with things. So this was good. I just thought it was good information, wanted to pass that along, let you know that we had that meeting, and I thought it was a good dialogue.
Very good.
So that concludes, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I think it would be helpful if we could even get annual reports from the planning. I don't know if it's the planning board or maybe the town's planning department, about if there's some way to, just to make sure that we don't overlook something like this. I mean, that report from Mr. Hedison, I guess, or maybe it was Mr. Belansky who supplied the report. I mean, it suggests that Chelmsford Woods residences, is costing the town 30% more than the revenue it generates. That's not really our place to approve or disapprove, right? That's a function of the selectmen and I guess the planning board. But yeah, we have to deal with it.
Right.
So it'd be good if they can.
I'll see if there's already some kind of an annual report that gets produced for an existing board.
Right.
That maybe we can just get a copy
Yeah,
of and we can
that might be helpful.
circulate it around. Okay.
Are there any liaison reports?
I do have one. I spoke with the head of the Chelmsford Friends of Music, Ms. Michelle Lee. And so going forward, I will sit in on their meetings as well. I think she was interested in our offer to kind of work with them a little bit. And I think, given the fact that they do an awful lot for enrichment as well, it is appropriate that we're kind of at least up to speed on what they're doing. So, as things go forward, I'll let you know. But that was something that we had talked about doing, and it looks like that's going to happen, so.
Anything else? One quick thing. At Rotary this week, it was brought up at RILA, which is the leadership conference that we go to, that one of the major activities is called reality check. And what the kids do is they're given a role to play in terms of economics, and they have to go around to different stations to plan for their life in terms of food, transportation, insurance, all those kinds of things. And the kids that have been out there and the adults watching it feel that it's had really a good value, because for most of the kids it's the first time they've faced those kinds of issues. They have economic discussions with their parents, but they're usually limited, not getting a sense of the whole picture. And there are a number of schools that already do this. So it's just in the early stages, but we do have the information from several schools that are doing it, as well as from RILA. So just so you know that that's going on, we'll be looking into possible implementation in one way or another, because economic education, it's in the news all the time, the need for it. We're always talking about checkbooks, but this goes well beyond checkbooks. So just so you know that that's going on. Okay. Any open items that we need to go back to that somebody's remembering? I think we've been doing pretty well keeping up on things.
Yeah, a lot of them have been
I think we're good.
pretty well covered.
Okay. We have a couple of things you noted for follow-up to tonight. Anybody want to remind us of anything in particular? Follow-up from tonight?
I'm just going to push the advertisement on that meeting for August 2nd with a copy of the PowerPoint from this evening. Get a communication out to parents and staff and invite them to come. And I'll actually, we didn't ask Ron Whittier when they were here, but I'll ask if they're available that day to possibly come and just be able to answer any questions directly about the presentation. We have a working group session that afternoon anyway, so they'll be in town. We'll see if they can stay over for the meeting.
Just want to make a comment. Great work on the room.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it came
Great
out really
tables.
nice.
It doesn't look like a funeral parlor anymore. It's perfect. I love it. I'm a fan.
Without the curtains, it really kind of brightens up the place.
Yeah. No candelabras in the corner. It's perfect. Love it.
Good.
He brings a new dimension to this committee, doesn't he?
It's awesome.
That's what I thought every time I walked this room. Like, it just needs big gold candles, like, in each corner. It's like, anyway, it'd be a weird town government.
All right. Lacking press, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Now we need to call to go into executive session.
Yeah, what we can do is take a 2-minute recess.
Yeah.
I'll go make sure that, what we're gonna do is leave the mics actually on the tables now, because
Okay.
it's a fixed table. So she's gonna turn the mics off. I'm just gonna confirm that.
Yep.
Come back and we can have our meeting.
Okay.